let me switch over to the reading room. As you can see, there's a little bit different since the last time we actually did this. To kind of catch you up, uh, let me go ahead and say this. This is the protocol for the reading before we get started, so I can actually do the time point. Gather round, pull up your favorite chair, or pull up your favorite way to relax. Uh, if you have air conditioning on, wrap up and pretend it's cold weather. But snuggle down and get ready for a few hours of reading to kind of get you away from the hustle and bustle of the day to day. To kind of catch you guys up, for those of you that have been wanting to hear the rest of the story, and it's been a while. It's been a while. I am so sorry that I have. It's real life has been hectic for streaming in general for me. I've had. I've started a job, left that job, came back to got another job, and now I'm at that job, and so it's been kind of hectic. Um, and I feel like I have slighted you guys because we've gotten 18 chapters in, and we haven't finished yet. To kind of get you caught up, Harry is investigating a double murder. Done by mystical means. It has led him down a path that has run him into a white court vampire and a unscrupulous mobster, and they're both not exactly happy with him being involved. To kind of put it simply. Now, before we begin, I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. I'm going to try to do, unless RL gets in the way, every Wednesday is going to be our reading time. So get used to seeing this hopefully on a weekly basis. And I would like to actually get through these books and actually continue at a good pace. I'd like to be able to finish this omnibus by Christmas. So, and now so we begin. And just fair warning, all alerts and everything are turned off. So if you're coming in hoping to, like, if you're a mod and you hope to uh, do your theme music, sadly it's disabled on the screen. So don't blow your command. Just as a reminder. Anyway, we shall begin with chapter 18. Have you ever felt despair? Absolute hopelessness? Have you ever stood in the darkness and known deep down, deep in your heart, in your spirit, that it was never ever going to get better? That something had been lost forever and it wasn't coming back? That's what it felt like walking out of the varsity, walking into the rain. When I'm in turmoil, when I can't think, when I'm exhausted and afraid and feeling very, very alone, I go for walks. It's just one of those things I do. I walk, and sooner or later something comes to me, something to make me feel less like jumping off a building. So I walked. It was pretty stupid in retrospect, walking around Chicago late on a Saturday night. I didn't look up very often. I walked and let things roll around in my head, my hands in the pockets of my duster, which flapped around my long legs while the light rain gradually plastered my hair to my head. I thought about my father. I usually do when I get that low. He was a good man, a generous man, a hopeless loser. A stage magician at a time when technology was producing more magic than magic. He had never had much to give his family. He was on the road most of the time, playing run-down houses, trying to scratch out a living for my mother. He wasn't there when I was born. He wasn't there when she died. He showed up more than a day after I'd been born. He gave me the names of 3 magicians and then took me with him on the road, entertaining children and retirees, performing in school gymnasiums and grocery stores. He was always generous, kind and more generous than we could afford, really. And he was always a little bit sad. He would show me pictures of my mother and talk about her every night. It got to where I almost felt that I knew her myself. As I got older, the feeling increased. I saw my father. I think, as she must have, a dear sweet gentleman. A little naive, but honest and kind. Someone who cared for others and who didn't value material gain over all else. I can see why she would have loved him. I never got to be old enough to be his assistant as he had promised me. He died in his sleep one night, an aneurysm, the doctor said. I found him cold, smiling, Maybe he'd been dreaming of Mother when he went, and as I looked at him I suddenly felt for the very first time in my life utterly, entirely alone. That something was gone that would never return, and a little hole had been hollowed out inside of me that wasn't ever going to be filled again. And that was how I felt that rainy spring night in Chicago, walking along the streets, my breath pluming into steam, my right boot creaking with every step, dead people occupying all of my thoughts. I shouldn't have been surprised, I suppose, when after hours of walking my steps carried me back to Linda Randall's apartment. The police were all gone now, the lights all off, all the gawking neighbors cozy in their beds. It was quiet in the apartment complex. Dawn wasn't yet brushing the sky, but somewhere, on a window ledge or in a rooftop nest, a bird was twittering. I was at the end of my strength, my resources. I hadn't thought of anything. Hadn't come up with any brilliant idea. The killer was going to get a spell together to kill me the next time he had a storm to draw on, and from the way the air felt, it could be any time. If he didn't kill me, Morgan would certainly have the White Council set to execute me at dawn on Monday. The bastard was probably out lobbying votes already. If the matter came before the council, I wouldn't stand a chance. I leaned against the door to Linda's apartment. It was striped with police line "Do Not Cross," yellow and black tape. I didn't really realize what I was doing until I'd already worked a spell that opened the door, unfastened the lowest strip of yellow tape, and walked into her apartment. This is stupid, Harry, I told myself. I guess I wasn't in the mood to listen. I walked around Linda's apartment, smelling her perfume and her blood. They hadn't come to clean up the blood yet. The apartment manager will probably have to handle that later. They never really show you details like that at the movies. I eventually found myself lying on the floor on the carpeting next to Linda Randall's large bed. I was curled on my side, my back to her bed, my face toward the sliding glass doors that led out into her little concrete patio. I didn't feel like moving, like going anywhere, like doing anything. Useless. It had all been useless. I was going to die in the next 2 days. The worst part was that I wasn't sure that I cared. I was just so tired, exhausted from all the magic I'd had to use, from the walking, from the bruises and punches and lack of sleep. It was dark. Everything was dark. I think I must have fallen asleep. I needed it after everything that had happened. I don't remember anything else until the sun was too bright in my eyes. I blinked and lifted a hand against the light, keeping my eyes closed. Mornings had never been my best time, and the sun had risen above the tops of the buildings across the street, cheerful springtime sunshine that dashed down through the Linda Randall's curtains, through my eyelids and into my brain. I grumbled something and rolled over, face to the cool darkness under Linda's bed, back to the warm sunlight, but I didn't get back to sleep. Instead, I started to get disgusted with myself. "What the hell are you doing, Harry?" I demanded out loud. "Lying down to die," I told myself petulantly. "Like hell," my wiser part said. "Get off the floor and get to work." "Don't wanna. Tired. Go away." "You're not too tired to talk to yourself, so you're not too tired to bail your ass out of the alligators either. Open your eyes," I told myself firmly. I hunched my shoulders, not wanting to obey, but against my better judgment, I did open my eyes. The sunlight had turned Linda Randall's apartment into an almost cheerful place, overlaid with a patina of gold, empty still to be sure, but warm with a few good memories. I saw a high school yearbook lying nearby underneath the bed, several photographs serving as bookmarks. There was also a framed picture of a much younger Linda Randall, smiling brightly, none of the jaded weariness I had seen in her in evidence. Standing in her graduation robes between a kind-looking couple in their late 50s, her parents, I presume, she looked happy. And lying just on the edge of a stray little beam of sunlight, one that was already retreating as the sun rose above the edge of the buildings, was a small red plastic cylinder with a gray cap. My salvation. I snatched it out from under the bed. I was shaking. I shook the canister and it rattled. A roll of film was inside. I opened up the canister and dumped the film into my hand. The plastic leather had been retracted into the case. There were pictures on the film, but they hadn't been developed yet. I closed the film up again and reached into the pocket of my duster and drew out another canister, the one I'd found at Victor Sells' lake house. The two were a match. My mind spun around, taking off down a whole new track as an entirely new realm of possibility had opened up to me, and somewhere in it might be my opportunity, my chance to get out of this alive, to catch the killer, to salvage everything that had started going to hell. But it wasn't clear. I couldn't be sure what was going on, but I had a possible link now, a link between the murder investigation and Monica Sell's aborted inquiry into the disappearance of her husband, Victor. I had another lead to follow, and there wasn't much time to follow it. I had to get up, to get on my feet, and get going fast. You can't keep a good wizard down. I stood up, grabbed my staff and rod, and started toward the front door. The last thing I needed was to get caught trespassing on a crime scene. It could get me arrested and stuck in holding it, and I would be dead before I could get bail. My mind was already rolling ahead, working out the next step, trying to find this photographer who'd been at Victor's beach house and getting these pictures developed and see if there was anything in them that was worth Linda Randall's death. It was then I heard a sound and it stopped. It came again, a quiet scraping. Someone turned the key in the deadbolt of the apartment's front door and swung it open. Let me take a little brief drink. Chapter 19. There was no time to flee under the bed or into the bathroom, and I didn't want to be limited in mobility in any case. I leapt forward and stood behind the door as it opened, keeping very still. A man entered, slim, short, harried looking. His hair, a listless shade of brown, was drawn back into a ponytail. He wore dark cotton pants, a dark jacket, and carried a pouch on a strap by his side. He shut the door most of the way and looked around with great agitation, but like most people who were too nervous to be thinking clearly, he was seeing less than he should have been, and though his head swept over where I would have been in his peripheral vision, he didn't notice me. He was a good-looking man, or so it seemed, with strong lines to his jaw and cheekbones. He crossed the room and stopped short when he saw the blood-stained bed. I saw him clench his hands into fists. He made a strange cawing sound, then hurried forward to throw himself down on the floor by the bed and start pawing underneath it. After a few seconds, his pawing grew more frantic, and I heard him curse out loud. I slid my fingers over the smooth surface of the film canister in my pocket. So, the mysterious photographer lurking outside Victor Sells' lake house was here looking for the film. I had a feeling in my stomach like I get when I finish a particularly difficult jigsaw puzzle, a peculiar satisfaction mingled with a touch of smugness. I settled my staff and rod silently into the corner by the door and flipped my official police consultant's badge, complete with my photograph on it, out of my duster so that it showed against the black canvas. I covered my radio t-shirt with the coat and hoped that the man would be too rattled and nervous to notice that I was wearing sweatpants and cowboy boots beneath the duster. He's about to pull a whole Dean here. I kept my hands in my pockets, pushed the door shut with a little nudge on my boot, and just as it closed, said, "So, returning to the scene of the crime, I knew we'd catch you if I just waited." The man's reaction would have had me rolling in laughter any other day. He jerked, slammed his head against the bottom of the bed, yelped, drew himself back from the bed, turned to look at me, and all but leapt over the bed in surprise when he saw me. I revised my opinion of his looks. His mouth was too pinched, his eyes too small and too close together, giving him the intent, predatory look of a ferret. I narrowed my eyes and stalked toward him one slow pace at a time. "Just couldn't stay away, could you?" "No," he said. "Oh, God, you don't understand. I'm a photographer. See? He fumbled with the case at his side and produced a camera for it. "Take you pictures for the papers. That's what I'm doing here, just trying to get a good look around." "Save it," I told him. "We both know you aren't here to take pictures. You were looking for this." And I pulled the film canister out of my pocket, held it up, and showed it to him. His babbling stopped, and he stood stock still, staring at me. Then at the canister, he licked his lips and started trying to say something. "Who are you?" I asked. I kept my voice gruff, demanding. I tried to think of what Murphy would sound like if I was downtown with her right now, waiting for her to ask me a question. Wise, Donnie Wise." He swallowed, staring at me. "Am I in some kind of trouble?" I narrowed my eyes at him and sneered. "We'll see about that. Do you have identification?" "Sure, yeah, let me see it." I spared him with a glance and added, "Slowly." He goggled at me and reached for the hip pocket with exaggerated slowness. With one hand he drew out his wallet and flipped it open to his driver's license. I stalked toward him, snatched it, and studied it. His license and picture agreed with the name he had given me. "Well, Mr. Wise," I began, "this is an ongoing investigation. So long as you give me your cooperation, I don't think I looked up to see him peering at my name badge, and my voice trailed off. He jerked his wallet back and accused, "You're not a cop." I tilted my head back at an arrogant angle. Okay, maybe not, but I work with the cops and I've got your film. He cursed again, started stuffing his camera back into his bag, clearly meaning to leave. No, you've got nothing, nothing that connects any of this to me. I'm out of here. I watched him start past me toward the door. Don't be don't be so hasty, Mr. Wise. I really think you and I have things to discuss, like a dropped film canister underneath the deck of a house in Lake Providence last Wednesday night. He flicked a quick glance up to me. I have nothing to say to you, he mumbled, whoever the hell you are. He reached for the door and started to open it. I gestured curtly to my staff in the corner and hissed, in my best dramatic voice, Ventos servadas! Jerking my hand at the doorway, my staff, driven by the tightly controlled channels of air moving in response to my evocation, leapt across the room and slammed the door shut in front of Donnie Wise's nose. He went stiff as a board. He turned to face me, his eyes wide. My God, you're one of them. Don't kill me, he said. Oh, God, you've got the pictures. I don't know anything, nothing. I'm no danger to you. He tried to keep his voice calm, but it was shaking. I saw him tilt his eyes at the glass sliding doors to the little patio, as though calculating his chances of making it there before I could stop him. Relax, Mr. Wise, I told him. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm after the man who killed Linda. Help me. Tell me what you know. I'll take care of the rest. He let out a harsh little laugh and eased a half step toward the glass windows. And get myself killed like Linda, like those other people? No way. No, Mr. Wise, tell me what you know. I'll put a stop to the killings. I'll bring Linda's murderer to justice. I tried to keep my voice soothing, even fighting against the frustration I felt. Hell, I wanted to rattle him, but I hadn't meant to scare him so badly that he wanted to jump through a plate glass sliding door. I want these people stopped just as badly as you do. Why? He demanded. I saw a little contempt in his eyes. Now, what was she to you? Were you sleeping with her too? I shook my head. No, she's just one more dead person who shouldn't be. You're not a cop. Why risk your ass to do this? Why go up against these people? Haven't you seen what they can do? I shrugged. Who else is going to? He didn't answer me, so I held up the film canister. What are these pictures, Mr. Wise? What is on this film that's worth killing Linda Randall for? Donnie Wise rubbed his palms over his thighs. His ponytail twitched as he looked about the room. I'll make you a deal. Give me the film and I'll tell you what I know. I shook my head. I might need what's on here. What's there isn't any good to you if you don't know what you're looking at, he pointed out. I don't know you from Adam, and I don't want any trouble. All I want is to get my ass out of here alive in one piece. I stared at him for a moment. If I had traded him, I'd lose the film and whatever was on it. If I didn't, and if he was telling me the truth, the film wouldn't do me any good. The trail had led me here, to him. If I didn't dig up a lead somewhere else, I was dead. So I snapped my fingers, letting my staff rattle to the floor. Then I tossed him the film underhand. He dropped it and stooped to recover it, studying me warily. After I get out of here, he said, we're quits. I've never seen you before. I nodded. Fine, let's have it. Donnie swallowed and ran a hand back over his hair, giving his ponytail a nervous little tug at the end of the motion. I knew Linda from around. I'd taken some pictures of her for a portfolio. I do shoots for some of the girls around town. They want to make into magazines, most of them. Adult magazines, I asked. No, he snapped, nervous still. Uncle Abner's magazine for children. Of course adult mags. Nothing really classy, but you can make some good money, even if you're not Hugh Hefner's type. So on Wednesday, Linda comes to me. She says she's got a deal for me. I shoot some pictures for her and give her the film. And she's real nice to me. All I have to do is show up. But where she stays, shoot a roll through the windows and go deliver to her the next day. So I did. Now she's dead. Out on Lake Providence, I asked. Yeah. What'd you see there, I asked. Donnie Wise shook his head, his eyes drawn past me to the bed again. Linda, some other people, no one I knew. They were having some kind of party, all candles and stuff. It was storming like hell, a lot of thunder and lightning, so I couldn't really hear them. I worried for a little while about someone looking up and seeing me in the lightning, but I guess they were too busy. They were having sex, I said. No, he snapped. They were playing canasta. Yeah, sex. The real thing, not fake stuff on a set. The real thing don't look as good. Linda, some other women, 3 men. I shot my roll and got out. I grinned, but he didn't seem to have noticed the double entendre. You just don't get quality lowlife often enough anymore. Can you describe any of the other people? He shook his head. I wasn't looking, but they wasn't being too particular, if you take my meaning. Turned my stomach. Did you know what Linda wanted with the pictures? He looked at me and then snickered as though I were extremely simple. Jesus, buddy, what do you think someone wants with pictures like that? She wanted to get leverage on somebody. Hell, it wouldn't hurt her reputation if the pictures of her in the middle of an orgy got out, but it might have some of the people with her. What kind of simp wannabe cop are you? I ignored the question. What are you going to do with the film, Dunny? He shrugged. Trash it, probably. I saw his eyes flick from side to side, and I knew that he was lying to me. He'd keep the film, find out what was in the pictures, and if he thought he could get away with it, he'd try to weasel whatever profit he could out of it. He seemed the type, and I trusted my instincts. Allow me, I said, and snapped my fingers. Fuego! The canister's gray lid flew off in a little whoosh of flame, and Danny Wise yelped, drawing his hand back sharply. The red canister burst in the flame on its way to the ground and landed there in a crumpled, smoking lump. He stared at the film, then up at me, his mouth gaping. I hope I don't find out you lied to me, Donnie, I told him. He went as wise as she'd assured me that he hadn't, and turned and fled out of the apartment, knocking loose 2 bits of police tape on the way out. He didn't close the door behind him. I let him go. I believed him. He didn't seem bright enough to make up a story on the fly, as rattled as he had been. I felt a ferocious surge of triumph, of anger, and of the desire to find this person, whoever it was, who was taking the raw forces of life and creation and turning them to the ends of destruction, and to put him in the trash with the rest of the garbage. Whoever he was, murdering with magic and killing people by degrees with the third eye drug, he was someone I wanted to put down. My brain lurched into gear. Now that there was something to work on, some other possibilities for tomorrow morning than me dying in a variety of gruesome ways. Linda Randall had been planning on blackmailing someone. I took a staggering mental leap and figured it was Victor, or someone out at his house during the party. But why? I didn't have any pictures now. Only the information I'd got from Donnie Wise. I couldn't afford to wait around. I had to pursue the lead he'd given me if I was going to get to the bottom of this and find out who had killed Linda. How had I managed to get into all this trouble in only a few days, and how in the world had I managed to stumble across what appeared to be a complex and treacherous little plot by chance? Out at the house in Lake Providence on a separate investigation entirely. Let's snooze that ad. No ads. Simple answer. It hadn't been an accident. It had been by design. I had been directed there. Someone wanted me out at the lake house. Had wanted me to get involved and find out what was going on out there. Someone who was nervous as hell around wizards, who refused to give out her name, who had carefully dropped phrases that would make me believe her ignorance, who had to rush quickly out from her apartment, who was willing to let $500 go just to get me off the phone a few seconds faster. Someone who had drawn me out and forced me into the open, where I had attracted all sorts of hostile attention. That was the key. I gathered up my staff and rod and stalked out the door. It was time to talk to Monica Sells. Give me 1 second, guys. Pardon me. I am so sorry. Chapter 20. The cabbie dropped me off a block away from Monica Sells' house in the suburbs. I was running out of time, out of Murphy's loan, and out of patience, so I didn't waste any daylight in walking down the street toward the place. It was a cute little house, 2 stories, a couple of young trees in the front yard, just now starting to rival the house in height. There was a minivan in the driveway, and a basketball goal, well used. The lawn was grown rather long, but all the recent rains had left a good excuse for that. The street was a quiet one, and it took me a moment to realize that most of the houses on it were not so occupied. For sale signs stood in many yards, sparse curtains draped over empty gaping windows like cobwebs. There wasn't a lot of birdsong for a street with so many trees, and I couldn't hear any dogs barking as I walked along the sidewalk. Overhead, the clouds were thickening, building up for another thunderstorm. Taken all together, it had the feel of some place blighted, a place where a black wizard had set up shop. I swung through the Sells yard to the front door. I rang the bell and waited. There was no answer. I knocked. I leaned on the doorbell. Still no answer. I tightened my jaw and looked around. I didn't see anyone, so I turned back to the door, preparing to use a spell to open it. Instead, the door swung open maybe 6 inches. Monica Sells stood inside, peering at me with her green eyes. She was dressed in jeans, a plain flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and her hair was covered with a bandana. She wore no makeup. She looked both older and more appealing that way. I think maybe because it was a more natural look for her, something that was closer to the sort of person she really was, rather than the nice clothes and the jewelry she'd worn when she visited my office. Her face went pale, her lips bloodless. I don't have anything to say to you, Mr. Dresden, she said. Go away. I can't do that, I said. She started to swing the door shut, but I jammed the end of my staff into the doorway, keeping it from closing. I'll call the police, she said, voice strained. She leaned against the door, trying to keep me from coming in. Do it, I growled, and then I played a hunch, and I'll tell them about you and your husband. I was taking a shot in the dark, but what the hell? She didn't know that I didn't know what the hell was going on. My instincts paid off. I heard her sucking a breath and felt her resistance on the door sag a little. I put my shoulder to the door and leaned in hard, and she stepped back from me in surprise. I don't think she expected me to physically force my way into her house. Hell's I hadn't expected me to do that. I hadn't realized how angry I was until I saw a look of panic on her face when she looked up at me. I don't know what I looked like, but it must not have been friendly. I stopped. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath and tried to get a handle on my anger. It wouldn't profit me anything to lose control. That was when she went for the stunner. I heard her move, opened my eyes in time to see her snatch a black plastic case the size of a cellular phone from the piano and lunge toward me. Her face was pale, frightened. Blue lightning danced between two tines of the stunner as she shoved it at my stomach. I swept my staff upright from right to left, and the buzzing device went past me along with her lunge, striking the door frame behind me. I slipped past her into the living room and turned to face her as she recovered and turned around. I won't let you hurt them, she snarled. Not you, not anyone. I'll kill you before I let you touch them, wizard. And then she was coming at me again, fury replacing the terror in her eyes, a grim determination to succeed that made me think of Murphy for a second. For the first time, she was looking me in the face. For the first time, she forgot to keep her eyes averted from mine. And in that second, I saw inside of her. Things seemed to slow down for a moment, and I had time to see the color of her eyes, the structure of her face, to recognize where I had seen them before, why she had looked familiar to me. I had time to see behind her eyes the fear and love that motivated her every move she made, every step she took. I saw what moved her to come to me, why she was afraid. I saw her grief. I saw her pain. And the pieces fell into place, knowing the emotions that had drove her, the terrible love that she was showing even now. It all seemed perfectly obvious, and I felt stupid for not figuring it out days ago. Stop, I said, or tried to say before she thrust the stunner at me, stirred at my chest. I dropped staff and rod alike in a clatter of falling wood, and caught her wrist in both of my hands. She pushed the stunner up at my face, and I let her do it. It got to within 3 inches of me. The light brightened my eyes, and then I drew a breath and puffed it out onto the stunner along with an effort of will. There was a spark, a little puff of smoke, and then it went dead in her hands. She didn't know about that part. Like every other electronic gizmo seems to do whenever I'm around. Hell, I was surprised it had taken as long as it did to stop working. And even if it hadn't, it wasn't any trouble for me to hex it into uselessness. I continued holding her wrist, but the driving tension behind her arm had eased away to nothing. She was staring at my face, her eyes wide with shock at the meeting of our gazes. She started shaking and dropped the useless stunner with limp fingers. I clattered to the floor. I let go of her, and she just stared at me. I was shaking too. A soul gaze is never something pleasant or simple. God, sometimes I hated that I had to live with that. I hadn't wanted to know that she'd been abused as a child, that she had married a man who provided her with more of the same as an adult, that her only hope or light that she saw in her life was I botched the hell out of that. I'm so sorry. The only hope or light that she saw in her life was in her 2 children. There hadn't been time to set all of her reasons, all of her logic. I still didn't know why she had drawn me into this entire business, but knew that it was ultimately because she loved her 2 kids. And that was all I really needed, that and one other connection. The nagging resemblance to someone that I had noticed in her at my office. The rest fell into place from there. It took Monica Sells a moment to recover herself. She did with remarkable speed, as though she were a woman used to drawing on a mask after having it knocked off. I, I'm sorry, Mr. Dresden. She lifted her chin and regarded me with a fragile, wounded pride. What do you want here? A couple of things, I told her. I stooped down to recover my staff and my rod. I want my lock of hair back. I want to know why you came at me last Thursday, why you dragged me into this mess, and I want to know who killed Tommy Tom and Jennifer Stanton and Linda Randall. Monica's eyes grew even duller and her face paled. Linda's dead? Last night, I told her, and someone's planning on taking me out the same way the next chance they get. Outside in the far distance, thunder rumbled. Another storm was in the works, slowly building. When it got to town, I was a dead man. It was as simple as that. I looked back to Monica Sells, and it was all over her face. She knew about the storm just as well as I did. She knew about it, and there was a sort of sad and weary frustration in her eyes. You have to go, Mr. Dresden, she said. You can't be here when... You've got to go before it's too late. I stepped toward her. You're the only chance I have, Monica, and I asked you before to trust me. You've got to do it again. You've got to know that I'm not here to hurt you or your... A door opened in the hallway behind Monica. A girl on the gawky end of adolescence, with her hair the color of her mother's, leaned out into the hallway. Mom, she said in a quavering voice. Mom, are you okay? Do you want me to call the police? A boy, perhaps a year or two younger than his sister, poked his head out too. He was carrying a well-used basketball in his hands, turning it in nervous little gestures. I looked back to Monica. Her eyes were closed. There were tears coming, trailing down her cheeks. It took her a moment, but she drew in a breath and spoke to the girl in a clear, calm voice without turning around. I'm fine, she told them. Jenny, Billy, get back into the room and lock the door. I mean it. But, Mom, the boy began. Now, Monica said. Her voice was strained. Jenny put a hand on her brother's shoulder. Come on, Billy. She looked at me for just a moment. Her eyes were too old and too knowing for a child her age. Come on. The two vanished back in the room, closed the door, and locked it behind them. Monica waited till they were gone, then broke down into more tears. Please, please, Mr. Dresden, you have to go. If you're here when the storm comes, if he knows. She buried her face in her hands and made a quiet croaking sound. I stepped closer to her. I had to have her help. No matter how much pain she was in, no matter what kind of agony she was going through, I had to have her help, and I thought I knew the names to invoke to get it. I can be such a bastard sometimes. Monica, please, I'm up against the wall. I'm out of options. Everything I have leads here to you, and I don't have time to wait. I need your help before I wind up just like Jennifer and Tommy and Linda. I saw her eyes, and she looked up at me without turning her gaze away. Please, help me. I watched her eyes, saw the fear and grief and weariness there. I saw her look at me as I leaned on her and demanded more out of her than she could afford to give. All right, she whispered. She turned away and walked toward the kitchen. All right, I'll tell you what I know, Wizard, but there's nothing I can do to help you. She paused at the doorway and looked back at me. Her words fell with the weight of conviction, simple truth. There's nothing anyone can do now. I know that we're about to have an ad break, so I am actually going to take a quick break to drink in between chapters. I brought my tea jug with me. I can't believe I've been reading for almost 40 minutes. I forget how many chapters are in this book. We're almost done, believe it or not. 27, and we got 6 chapters to go. I think we might actually be able to finish it today. I know, right? It's taken us months to do it, but here we are. I might even start Full Moon today. We'll see. But if I do, I'll have to do a time index or something. Chapter 21. Monica Sells had a cheerful, brightly colored kitchen. She collected painted cartoon cows, and they ranged all over the walls and cabinet doors of the room in a cheerful bovine sort of indolescence. The refrigerator was covered with crayon drawings and report cards. There was a row of colored glass bottles on the windowsill. I could hear wind chimes outside, restlessly stirred by a cool rising wind. The big friendly cow clock on the wall swung its tail back and forth, tick, tick, tick. Monica sat down at the kitchen table. She drew up her legs beneath her and seemed to relax by a few degrees. Her kitchen, I sensed, was her sanctuary, the place where she retreated when she was upset. It was lovingly maintained, sparkling, and clean. I let her relax for as long as I could, which wasn't long. I could almost feel the air building up to a greater tension, the storm brewing in the distance. I couldn't afford to play with kid gloves. I was just about to open my mouth and start pushing when she said, "Ask questions, Wizard, and I'll answer them." I wouldn't even know where to start myself. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at anything. "All right," I said. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "You know Jennifer Stanton, don't you? You're related to her." Her expression didn't change. "We have our mother's eyes," she confirmed. "My little sister was always the rebel. She ran away to become an actress, but became a whore instead. It suited her in her own way. I always wanted her to strip. I always wanted her to stop. Oop. I always wanted her to stop, but I don't think she wanted to. I'm not sure if she knew how." "Have the police contacted you yet about her death?" "No. They called my parents down in St. Louis. They haven't realized yet that I live in town. Someone will notice soon, I'm sure." I frowned. "Why didn't you go to them? Why did you come to me?" She looked over at me. "The police can't help me, Mr. Dresden. Do you think they would believe me? They'd look at me like I was some kind of lunatic. If I went to them babbling about magic spells and rituals," she grimaced. "Maybe they'd be right. Sometimes I wonder if I am growing crazy." "So you came to me," I said. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" "How could I?" she asked. "How could I walk into the office of someone I didn't even know and tell him—" She swallowed and squeezed her eyes shut over more tears. "And tell me what, Monica?" I asked. I kept my voice soft. "Who killed your sister?" Wind chimes tinkled outside. The friendly cow clock went tick, tick, tick. Monica Sells drew in a long, shuddering breath and closed her eyes. I saw her gathering up the frayed threads of her courage, knotting them up as tightly as she could. I knew the answer already, but I needed to hear it from her. I needed to be sure. I tried to tell myself that it would be good for her to face such a thing, just to say it out loud. I wasn't sure I bought that. Like I said, I'm not a very good liar. Monica squeezed her hands into tight fists and said, "God help me. God help me." "It was my husband, Mr. Dresden. It was Victor." I thought she would dissolve into tears, but instead she just hunched tighter into her little defensive ball, as though she expected someone to start hitting her. "That's why you wanted me to find him," I heard myself say. "That's why you sent me out to the lake house to look for him. You knew he was there. You knew if you sent me out there he would see me." My voice was quiet, not quite angry, but the words pounded across Monica's cells like sledgehammers throwing up chips of concrete. She flinched from each of them. "I had to," she moaned. "Oh, God, Mr. Justin, you don't know what it's like." And he was getting worse. He didn't start as a bad man, really, but he kept getting worse and worse, and I was afraid. "For your kids," I said. She nodded and rested her forehead on her knees. And then the words started spilling out of her, slowly at first, and then in a greater rush, as if she couldn't hold back the immense weight of them any longer. I listened. I owed it to her for walking all over her feelings, for forcing her to talk to me. "He was never a bad man, Mr. Dresden. You have to understand. He worked hard. He worked hard, so hard for us, to give us something better. I think it was because he knew that my parents had been so wealthy. He wanted to give me just as much as they could have, but he couldn't. It would make him so frustrated, so angry. Sometimes he would lose his temper, but it wasn't always so bad, and he could be so kind sometimes too. I thought that maybe the children would help him stabilize. It was when Billy was about 4 that Victor found the magic. I don't know where but he just started getting obsessed with it. He brought home books and books, strange things. He put a lock on the door to the attic, and after dinner he'd vanish up there. Some nights he wouldn't come to bed. Some nights I thought I could hear things up there, voices, or things that weren't voices." She shuddered. "He started to get worse. He'd get angry, and things would happen, little things. The drapes would catch on fire at one edge, or things would fly around off the walls and break." She turned her haunted gaze toward her cute tacky cows for a moment, as though assuring herself they were still there. "He'd scream at us for no reason, or burst out laughing for no reason. He saw things I couldn't see. I thought he was going crazy." "But you never confronted him," I said quietly. She shook her head. "No, God forgive me, I couldn't. I had gotten used to being quiet, Mr. Dresden, to not making a fuss." She took a deep breath and continued. "Then one night he came to me and woke me up. He made me drink something. He told me that it would make me understand him, and that if I drank, I would see the things he saw. That he wanted me to understand him, that I was his wife." This time she did start crying, tears that coursed silently down her cheeks, the corners of her mouth. Something else clicked solidly into place where I already thought it would go. "The three," I said. She nodded, and I saw things, Mr. Dresden. I saw him. Her face screwed up, and I thought she was going to vomit. I could sympathize to have third eyesight suddenly opened up on you like that, not knowing what was happening to you, to look on the man you had wed, who had given you children, and to see him for what he truly was, obsessed with power, consumed by greed. It had to have been hell, and it would remain with her always. She would never find the memory fading. Never find the comfort and solace of years of putting comfortable padding between her and the image of her husband as a monster. She continued, speaking in low, hurried rush. I wanted more, even when it was over. Even though it was horrible, I wanted more. I tried not to let it show, but he could tell. He looked in my eyes, and he knew, Mr. Dresden, like you did just now. And he started to laugh, like he had just won the lottery. He kissed me. He was so happy, and it made me sick. He started making more of the drug, but he could never make enough. It drove him berserk, furious, and then he started to realize that when he was angry, he could do more. He would look for excuses to be angry. He drove himself into rages, but it still wasn't enough. She swallowed. That's when I thought of frightened pizza drivers and ferry commentary on human sporting. That's when he realized he could touch other people's emotions too. I said, use them to help power his magic. She nodded and curled tighter in on herself. It was only me at first. He'd frighten me, and afterward I'd be so exhausted. Then he found out what he was doing. Lust worked better, so he started looking around for backers, investors, he called them. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading, please, Mr. Dresden, you have to understand, it wasn't always so bad. There were moments that I could almost see him again, that I thought he was going to come back to us. I tried to look on her with compassion, but I wasn't sure I felt anything but fury that anyone should treat his family this way, or anyone else. For that matter, my feelings must have showed on my face because Monica quickly averted her eyes and huddled down in fear. She spoke in a hurried voice as though to put off my rage, in the voice of a woman who has put off rage with desperate words more than once. He found the Becketts. They had money. He told them that they would help him. He would get their vengeance on Johnny Marcone. For their daughter, they put their trust in him. They gave him all the money he needed. I thought of the Becketts and their lean, hungry faces. I thought of Mrs. Beckett's dead eyes. I may have to pause here for a second because of the ad break. I can't stop him no more, Captain. Yeah. And he started the rituals, the ceremony. He said he needed our lust. Her eyes shifted left and right, and the sickened look on her face grew deeper. It wasn't so bad. He could close the circle, and all of a sudden nothing mattered. Nothing but flesh. I could lose myself for a while. It was almost like an escape. She rubbed her hand on her leg of Virginia's as if trying to wipe something foul off of it. But it wasn't enough. That's when he started talking to Jennifer. He knew what she did. Then she would know the right kind of people, like her, like Linda. Linda introduced him to Marcone's man. I don't know his name, but Victor promised him something that was enough to bring him into the circle. I didn't have to go all the time then. Either Jenny or I would stay with the children. Okay, let me pause right there for the ad break. I am so sorry, but we have to. Good time to take a good tea break. I hope y'all are enjoying the story. I know it's getting into some serious topics there. But you have to remember this was written a long time ago. But I sincerely hope you're enjoying it. And I'm sorry if I get a word or two wrong. My lighting in here is really terrible. I think when it comes time for my 2 hour break, if we're not quite finished, I may actually change that and actually flip the light on. I usually don't do that this time of day, but it is getting darker and darker in here. I need a little light behind my setup, honestly. That's not connected to the. Um, Maybe I should get my lamp back from Thorn. I'm actually having to use the computer for light at the moment. Let's Let's see if that helps. Oh God, no, that was actually worse. I pulled up my I pulled up my computer, my home screen, and it's like suddenly no, that was worse. But we do have, like I said, unfortunately, we do have an ad break for about another minute or so. I'm probably going to. I've been just trying to decide if I'm going to doing. It all depends on how long it takes for us to get through the book because we are very close to the end, and I'm like, I should devote the entire stream to the book until we get done. Which would be good because that way we can start new next Wednesday, which would be great. I will probably edit this and uh, put it together with the rest of them, which I have not uploaded any YouTube content at all this year, and I'm so well, aside from a few like off projects, but I am so sorry that I've not done much TikTok or YouTube content. It has been so crazy since the first of the year, and I'll be honest with you, as a content creator, I flog myself for that. All right, we're back to the book. Where to get to? Let's see where I got to. Let's see. I didn't have to go all the time then. Either Jenny or I would stay with the children. Victor made the drug. We started to make money. Things got better for a little while as long as I didn't think too much. Monica took a deep breath. That's when Victor started getting darker. He called demons. I saw them, and he said he needed more power. He was hungry for it. It was horrible, like watching a starving animal, forever pacing. And I saw him start looking at the children, Mr. Dresden. It made me afraid. The way he looked at them, sometimes I knew. This time she buckled and doubled toward the floor with a groan. She shuddered and wept out of control. Oh, God, my babies, my babies. I wanted to go to her to offer my hand to hold, to put an arm around her shoulders and tell her it'd be all right, but I knew her now. I had looked inside. It would make her scream. God, Harry, I thought, have you tortured this poor woman enough? I rummaged in cabinets till I found a glass. I ran cold water from the sink and poured it into the glass, and then went over and put it down by her. She straightened in her chair and took the glass between shaking hands. She took a sip. She spilled a little under her chin. I'm sorry, I said. It was all I could think of to say. If she heard me, it didn't show. Let me get this adjusted a little bit better. If she heard me, it didn't show. She sipped her water, then continued, as if desperate to finish to get the taste of the words out of her mouth. I wanted to leave him. I knew he'd be furious. But I couldn't let the children stay close to him. I tried to talk to Jenny about it, and she took matters in her own hands. My little sister tried to protect me. She went to Victor and told him that if he didn't let me leave, she would go to the police next and to Johnny Marconi. She'd tell them all about him, and he killed her, I said. Hell, Victor hadn't needed any Jennifer Stanton's hair to kill her. Any kind of sample of bodily fluid would have worked. With the ceremonies of lust that he had been holding, he had ample opportunity to collect from poor Jennifer Stanton. Maybe he even had her bring him a sample from Tommy Tom. Or maybe Jennifer and Tommy Tom had just been too close as they were making love for the spell to affect just one of them when he killed them. He killed her, Monica confirmed. Her shoulders slumped with a sudden weariness. That's when I came to you, because I thought you might be able to do something before he hurt my babies, before he killed someone else. Now Linda's dead too, and soon you, Mr. Dresden. You can't stop him. No one can. Monica, I said. She shook her head and curled up in a miserable little ball. Go, she said. Oh, God, please go, Mr. Dresden. I don't want to see it when he kills you too. My heart felt like a lump of cold wax in my chest. I wanted badly to tell her everything would be all right. I wanted to dry her tears and tell her that there was still joy in the world, that there was still light and happiness, but I didn't think she would hear me. Where she was, there was nothing but an endless, hopeless darkness full of fear, pain, and defeat. So I did the only thing I could. I withdrew in silence and left her to weeping. Perhaps it would help her start to heal. To me, it only sounded like pieces of glass falling from a shattered window. As I walked toward the front door, a little motion to the left caught my eye. Jenny still stood in the hallway, a silent wraith. She regarded me with luminous green eyes like her mother's, like the dead aunt whose namesake she was. I stopped and faced her. I'm not sure why. You're the wizard, she said quietly. You're Harry Dresden. I saw your picture in the newspaper once, the arcane. I nodded. She studied my face for a long minute. Are you going to help my mom? It was a simple question, but how do you tell a child that things just aren't that simple? That some questions don't have simple answers or any answers at all? I looked back at her two knowing eyes and then quickly away. I didn't want her to see what sort of person I was, the things I had done. She didn't need that. I'm going to do everything I can to help your mom. She nodded. Do you promise? I promised her. She thought that over for a moment, studying me. Then she nodded. My daddy used to be one of the good guys, Mr. Dresden, but I don't think that he is anymore. Her face looked sad. It was a sweet, unaffected expression. Are you going to kill him? Another simple question. I don't want her. I don't want to, I told her, but he's trying to kill me. I might not have a choice. She swallowed and lifted her chin. I loved my Aunt Jenny, she said, her eyes brightened with tears. Mama won't say, and Billy's too little to figure it out, but I know what happened. She turned with more grace and dignity than I could have managed and started to leave, and then said quietly, I hope you're one of the good guys, Mr. Dresden. We really need a good guy. I hope you'll be all right. Then she vanished down the hall, bare silent feet. I left the house in the suburbs as quickly as I could. My legs drove me down the oddly silent sidewalk and back to the corner where the cabbie was waiting, meter ticking away. I got in the cab and told the cabbie to drive me to the nearest payphone. Then I closed my eyes and struggled to think. It was hard through all the pain I felt. Maybe I'm stupid or something, but I hate to see people like Monica and like little Jenny hurting like that. There shouldn't be any pain like that in the world. And every time I run into it, it makes me furious. Furious and sad. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or to cry. I wanted to pound Victor Sells' face in, and I wanted to crawl into bed and hide under the covers. I wanted to give Jenny Sells a hug and tell her everything would be all right. And I was still afraid, all tight and burning in my gut. Victor Sells of the Shadows and Demons was going to kill me as soon as the storm rolled in. Think, Harry, I told myself. Think, damn it! The cabbie gave me an odd look in the rearview mirror. I stuffed down all the feelings, all the fear, all the anger into a tight little ball. I didn't have time to let those feelings blind me now. I needed clarity, focus, purpose. I needed a plan. Murphy might be able to help me. I could tip her off about the lake house and send in the cavalry. They might find a stockpile of 3 out there. They could then arrest Victor like any other dealer. But there were too many holes in that plan. What if Victor wasn't keeping his stores at the lake house? What if he eluded the police? Monica and children would be in danger if he did. Not only that, what if Murphy didn't listen to me? Hell, the judge might not even issue a warrant to search private property on the word of a man who probably had a warrant out for his own arrest. Now, not only that, but the bureaucracy involving in working with the authorities in Lake Providence on a Sunday, no less, would slow things down. It might not happen in time to save me from having my heart torn out. No, I couldn't rely on the police. If this was any other time, if I was held in less suspicion by the White Council, I would report Victor Sells to them and let them handle the whole thing. They're not exactly soft on people using magic like Victor used it to call up demons to kill, to produce drugs. He had probably broken every law of magic. The White Council would waste no time in sending someone like Morgan to wipe Victor out. But I couldn't do that either. I was already under suspicion thanks to Morgan's narrow-minded blindness. The council was already meeting at sunrise on Monday. Some of the other members of the council might listen to me, but they would be traveling now. I had no way of reaching any of those that were sympathetic to me, no way of asking for help. There wasn't time. In fact, to try to round up any of my usual allies. So I concluded it was up to me, alone. It was a sobering thought. I had to confront Victor Sells, as strong a practitioner as I had ever gone up against in his own place of power, the lake house. Not only that, I had to do it without breaking any of the laws of magic. I couldn't kill him with sorcery, but somehow I had to stop him. Odds seemed really good that I was going to get killed, whether I tried to face him or not. To hell with it then. If I was going to go out, it wasn't going to be while I was lying around moaning and bitching about how useless it all was. If Victor Sells wanted to take out Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, he was going to have to shove his magic right down my throat. Sorry. This decision cheered me somewhat. At least I knew what I was doing now, where I was going. What I needed was an edge. I decided something to pull on Victor. Something he wouldn't expect. Now that I knew who he was, I understood the magic I had run into outside my apartment a little bit better. It had been potent, deadly, but not sophisticated. Not well controlled. Victor was powerful, strong, and natural mage. but he wasn't practiced. He didn't have any training. If only I could have, only if I had something of his, something like his own hair that I could use against him. Maybe I should have checked the bathroom at Monica's, but I had the feeling that he wouldn't have been that careless. Anyone who spends time thinking about how to use that sort of thing against people is going to be doubly paranoid that no one had the opportunity to use that against him. Then it struck me. I did have something of Victor's. I had his scorpion talisman back in the drawer of my desk in my office. It was one of his own devices, something close and familiar. I could use it to create a bond to him, to sort of judo his own power back against him and beat him with it hands down, no questions asked. I might have a chance yet. I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The cabbie pulled into the gas station and parked next to the payphone. I told him to wait for a minute and got out, fumbling a quarter from my pocket to make the call. If it did turn out that I wouldn't leave the city tomorrow, I wanted to make damn sure that the hounds of hell would be growling at Victor Sell's heels. I dialed Murphy's number down at the station. It rang several times. Finally, someone answered. The line was scratchy noise, and I could barely make out who it was. Murphy's desk, this is Carmichael. Carmichael, I said loudly into the phone. It's Harry Dresden. I need to talk to Murphy. What? Carmichael said. There was a squeal of static. Damn it, the phones go to hell on me at the worst times. I can't hear you. Murphy, you want Murphy? Who's this? Anderson, is that you? It's Harry Dresden, I shouted. I need to talk to Murphy. Eh? Carmichael grunted. I can't hear you, Andy. Look, Murphy's out. She took that warrant down to Harry Dresden's office to take a look around. She what? I said. Harry Dresden's office, Carmichael said. She said she'd be back soon. Look, this connection's awful. Try to call back, and he hung up on me. He's like, shit. I fumbled for another quarter, my hands shaking, and dialed my own office number. The last thing I needed was for Murphy to go poking around my office, maybe impounding things. If she stuck the scorpion in evidence, I was done for. I'd never be able to explain it to her in time, and if she saw me face to face, she might be furious enough for me to just have me slapped into holding and left me there overnight. If that happened, I'd be dead by morning. My phone rang a couple times, and Murphy answered. The line was blissfully clear. Harry Dresden's office. Murph, I said, thank God, I need to talk to you. I could practically feel her anger. Too late for that now, Harry. You could have come talk to me this morning. I heard her moving around. She started opening drawers. Damn it, Murph, I said, frustrated. I know who the killer is. Look, you've got to keep out of that desk. It could be dangerous. I thought I had been going to tell her a lie, but I realized as I said that I was telling the truth. I remember seeing or thinking I had seen movement from the talisman when I examined it before. Maybe I hadn't been imagining things. Dangerous? Murphy growled. Heard her scattering pens out of the top drawer of my desk, moving things around. The talisman was in the drawer beneath. I'll tell you what's dangerous. Fucking with me is dangerous, Dresden. I'm not playing some kind of game here, and I can't trust what you say anymore. Murphy, I said, trying to keep my voice even, you've got to trust me one more time. Stay out of my desk, please. There was silence for a moment. I heard her draw in a breath and let out through her mouth. Then Murphy said, her voice hard, professional. Why, Dresden? What are you hiding? I heard her open the middle drawer. There was a clicking sound, a startled oath from Murphy. The receiver clattered to the floor. I heard gunshots, shockingly loud, whining ricochets, and then a scream. Damn it! I shouted on the phone. Murphy! I slammed the phone down and sprinted back to the cab. The cabbie blinked at me. Hey, buddy, where's the fire? I slammed the door shut and gave him the address to my office. And then I thrust all my remaining cash at him and said, get me there 5 minutes ago. The cabbie blinked at the money, shrugged, and said, crazies. Cabbies get all the crazies. And he tore out in the street, leaving a cloud of smoke behind us. I'm going to take just a brief tea break. And see, that's the thing. Every time I take a tea break, I have to lean down so I make a noise. I know that, babe. I know that. Man, Wolf just went live. I'm just... Alright. Had to take a little drink. That's the thing with this. It's very thirsty work doing this. Good timing, though. It's right at the 1 hour mark. Chapter 22. The building was locked on Sunday. I jammed my key in the lock, twisted it hard to open it, and jerked the keys out again. I didn't bother with the elevator, just hurtled up the stairs as quickly as I could. 5 stories worth of stairs. It took me less than a minute, but I regretted every second of it. My lungs were burning and my mouth was dry as sand as I reached the 5th floor and sprinted down the hallway to my office. The halls were quiet, empty, dim. The only light came from the exit signs and from the overcast day outside. Shadows stretched and settled in the closed doorways. The door to my office was ajar. I could hear my ceiling fan squeaking on its mounting underneath the labored wheezing of my own breath. The overhead light wasn't on, but the reading light on my desk must have been, because yellow light outlined the doorway and laid a swath of gold across the floor of the hall. I stopped at the threshold. My hands were shaking so much I could hardly hold my staff and rod. "Murphy," I called out. "Murphy, can you hear me?" My voice was hoarse, breathless. I closed my eyes and listened. I thought I heard two things. First was a labored breath with a faint moan on the exhale, "Murphy." The second was a dry, scuttling sound. I could smell gunpowder on the air. I clenched my jaw in sudden anger. Victor Sell's little beauty, whatever it was, had hurt my friend. Like hell I was going to stand out here and give the run of my office. I shoved the door open with my staff and stalked into the office, my blasting rod extended before me with words of power upon my lips. Directly in front of my office door was a table arranged with a series of pamphlets with titles like "Real Witches Don't Float So Good" and "Magic in the 21st Century." I had written some of them myself. They were meant for the curious, for people who just wanted to know about witches and magic. I squatted for a moment, blasting rod aimed beneath the table, but saw nothing. I rose again, looked back and forth, rod still ready. To the right of the door is a wall lined with filing cabinets and a couple of easy chairs. The cabinets were shut, but something could have been hiding beneath one of the chairs. I slid to my left, checked behind the door to the office, and pressed my shoulder to the wall, keeping my eyes on the room. My desk is in the back corner to the right as you come in the door. Diagonal from it, it's a corner office. There are windows on either side of the outside walls. My shades were, as usual, drawn. The overhead fan in the center of the room spun around with a tired little groan on every rotation. I kept my eyes moving, my senses alert. I choked down my anger ferociously and made myself remain cautious. Whatever had happened to Murphy, I wouldn't do her any good by letting it happen to me, too. I moved slowly, carefully, my blasting rod held it ready. I could see Murphy's tennis shoes behind my desk. She looked like she was curled on her side from the way her feet were angled, but I couldn't see the rest of her. I pushed forward, striding to the center of the back wall, keeping my blasting rod level like a gun at the floor behind the desk as it became visible. Murphy lay there, curled on her side, her golden hair in an artless sprawl above her head, her eyes open and staring blindly. She was dressed in jeans, a button-down shirt, and a Cubs satin jacket. Her left shoulder was stained with a blot of blood. Her gun lay next to her a couple feet away. My heart stepped up into my throat. I heard her take a little breath and groan when she let it out. "Murphy," I said, then louder, "Murphy." I saw her stir a fitful emotion that was in response to my voice. "Easy, easy," I told her. "Relax, don't try to move. I'm going to try to help you." I knelt to her very slowly, watching the room all around. I didn't see anything. I set my staff aside and felt her throat. Her pulse was racing, thready. There was not enough blood for it to be a serious injury, but I touched her shoulder. Even through the jacket I could feel the swelling. "Harry," Murphy rasped, "is that you?" "It's me, Murph," I told her, setting my blasting rod aside and slowly reaching for the phone. The middle drawer of my desk, where the scorpion talisman had been, was open and empty. "Just hang on, I'm going to call an ambulance to help you." "Can't believe it, you bastard," Murphy wheezed. I felt her stir around a little. "You set me up." I drew the phone down and dialed 911. "Hush, Murph, you've been poisoned. You need help fast." The 911 operator came on and took my name and address. I told her to send an ambulance prepared to treat someone for poisoning, and she told me to stay on the line. I didn't have time to stay on the line. Whatever had done this to Murphy, it was still around somewhere. I had to get her out of here, and then I had to recover Victor's talisman and be able to use it against him when I went up to the lake house. Murphy stirred again, then I felt something hard and cool flick around my wrist, and the clicker clacked shut. I blinked and looked down at her. Murphy's jaw was set in a stubborn line as she clicked the other end of the handcuffs around her own wrist. "You're under arrest," she wheezed. "You son of a bitch. Wait till I get you into an interrogation room. You aren't going anywhere." I stared at her, stunned. "Murph," I stammered, "my God, you don't know what you're doing." "Like hell," she said, her lip lifting a ghost of its usual snarl. She twisted her head around, grimacing in pain, and squinted at me. "You should have talked to me this morning. Got you now, Dresden." She broke off in a panic gasp and added, "You jerk." "You stubborn bitch from hell." I felt a loss for a second, then shook my head. "I've got to get you out of here before it comes back," I said, and scooped forward to try to gather her up. That's when the scorpion exploded toward me from the shadows beneath my desk, a harsh burst of dry, scuttling motion. It wasn't a bug I could squash with my fingers anymore. It was the size of a large terrier, all brown and glinting, and it was almost too fast to see coming. I convulsed away from it and saw the flash of its tail, saw its stinger whip forward and missed my eye by a hair breadth. Something cool and wet speckled my cheek. My skin started to burn. Venom. My started motion made my leg jerk and kicked my staff and rod away from me. I rolled after the ladder desperately. Murphy's handcuffs brought me up short, and both of us made sounds of discomfort as the steel bands cut at the base of our hands. I stretched for the rod, felt the smooth roundness of it at my fingertips, and then there was a scuttling sound, and the scorpion came at my back. The rod squirted out from beneath my grasping fingers and rolled away out of reach. I didn't have time for a spell, but I grabbed at the middle drawer of my desk, jerked it all the way out of its frame, and barely managed to shove it between the scorpion and myself. There was a hiss of air and a smacking sound of breaking wood. The scorpion's stinger plunged through the bottom of my desk drawer and stuck fast. A crab claw pincher gouged a hole through my sweatpants and into my leg. I screamed and hurled the drawer away. The scorpion, its tail still stuck, went with it, and they both landed in a heap a few feet away. "Won't do you any good, Dresden," Murphy moaned incoherently. She must have been too far gone from the poison to understand what was going on. "I've got you. Stop fighting it. Get some answers from you now." "Sometimes, Murph," I panted, "you make things just a little harder than they need to be. Anyone ever tell you that?" I bent down to her and slipped my cuffed wrist beneath her arm and around her back, drawing her own arm back with me, my right arm, her left, bound by the handcuff. "My ex-husband's," she moaned. I strained and lifted us both off the ground and started hobbling toward the door. I could feel the blood on my leg, the pain where the scorpion had ripped it hot and hateful. "What's happening?" Confusion and fear trembled in Murphy's voice. "Harry, I can't see." Shit! The poison was getting to her. The poison of the common brown scorpion found all over most of the United States is much more venomous than the sting of a bumblebee. Of course, most bumblebees aren't the size of a family dog either, and Murphy wasn't a big person. If a lot of poison had been introduced into her system, the odds were against her. She needed medical attention. She needed it immediately. If my hands had been free, I would have taken up my staff and rod and done battle, but I didn't like my odds tied to Murphy. Even if I could keep the thing off me, it might land on her, sting her again, and put an end to her. I was at a bad angle to search for her keys, and I didn't have time to go down the ring trying them on handcuffs one by one. Any magic that I could work fast enough to shatter the cuffs in time would probably kill me with flying shrapnel, and there wasn't time to work out a gentler escape spell. "Damn it, Dad," I thought. "I wish you'd lived long enough to show me how to slip out of a pair of handcuffs." "Harry," Murphy repeated, her voice thready. "What's happening? I can't see." I saved my breath and lugged Murphy toward the door without answering her. Behind me there was fierce scraping and clicking. I looked back over my shoulder. The scorpion stinger was stuck fast in the drawer, but the thing rapidly ripping the wood to shreds with its pincers and legs. I gulped, turned, and hobbled out of my office and down the hall with Murphy. I managed to swing the door in my office shut with one foot. Murphy's legs did little to support her, and the difference in our heights made the trip awkward as hell. I was straining to keep her upright and moving. I reached the end of the hall, the door to the stairway on my right and the elevator on my left. I stopped for a moment, panting, trying not to let the sounds of splintering wood down the hall rattle my judgment. Murphy sagged against me, speechless now, and if she was breathing I couldn't tell. There was no way I was going to be able to carry her down the stairs. Neither of us had enough left to manage that. The ambulance would be arriving in minutes, and if I didn't have Murphy down there when it arrived, I might as well just leave her on the floor to die. I grimaced. I hated elevators, but I pushed the button and waited. Round lights on the elevator doors began counting up to 5. Down the hall from me, the splintering sound stopped, and something crashed into my office door, rattling it on its frame. "Hell's bells, Harry," I said aloud. I looked up at the lights, too. A pause, approximately 10 centuries long. 3. "Hurry up," I snarled and jabbed the button 100 more times. And then I remembered the bracelet of shields around my left wrist. I tried to focus on it, but couldn't, but it twisted awkwardly beneath Murphy, supporting her. So I laid her down gently and quickly as I could and lifted my left hand and focused on the bracelet. The lower third of my office door exploded outward, and the brown gleaming form of the scorpion bounded across the hallway and into the wall. It was bigger now. The damn thing was growing. It bounced off the wall in a scrabbling, horrible agility, oriented on me, and hurtled down the hall toward me as fast as a man can run, its legs clicking and scuttling furiously over the floor. It leapt at me, claws extended, stinger flashing. I focused my will on the defensive shield the bracelet helped me form and maintained, struggling to get it together before the scorpion hit me. I did, barely. The invisible shield of air met the scorpion a hair's breadth from my body and sent it rebounding back onto its back. It struggled for a second, awkward and flailing. Behind me, the elevator dinged and the door swooped graciously open. Without time to be delicate, I grabbed Murphy's wrist and hauled her into the elevator with me, jabbing at the button for the lobby. In the hall, the scorpion thrashed its tail and righted itself, oriented on me again with an uncanny intelligence, and flew toward me. There wasn't time to get my shield together again. I screamed. The elevator door swooped shut, and there was a sharp thud and the car rattled as the scorpion smashed into them. The car started down and I tried to regain my breath. What the hell was that thing? It wasn't just an insect. It was too fast, too damn smart for that. It had ambushed me, waiting until I had my set of weapons aside to come after me. It had to be something else, some kind of power construct built small and designed to draw energy to get bigger and stronger. An arthropod version of Frankenstein's monster. It wasn't really alive, just a golem, a robot, a programmed thing with a mission. Victor must have figured where his talisman had gotten to and set a spell on it to attack anyone that came in contact with it. The crazy bastard. Murphy had stumbled right into it. It was still growing, getting faster and stronger and more vicious. Getting Murphy out of danger wasn't enough. I had to find a way to deal with the scorpion. I didn't want to, but I was the only one on the block who could. There was too much potential danger involved. What if it didn't stop growing? I had to kill it before it got out of control. The lights on the elevator panel kept counting down 4 to 3 to 2, and then the elevator shuddered and groaned to a stop. The lights flickered and went out. Oh crap, I said, not now, not now! The elevators hate me too. I jabbed at the buttons, nothing happened. A second later there was a cough of smoke and the lights behind the buttons went out too, leaving me in darkness. The emergency lighting came on for just a second, and then there was a pop of a burning filament, and it went away too. Murphy and I were left huddling in the darkness on the floor. Overhead, outside the elevator shaft, there was a sound of shrieking metal. I looked up at the invisible roof of the elevator car in the darkness. You have got to be kidding me, I muttered. Then there was a rattling bang, and something the weight of a small gorilla landed on the roof of the elevator. There was a second silence, and then something started a deafening tearing at the roof. You have got to be kidding me, I shouted. But the scorpion wasn't. It was wrenching back the roof of the elevator, rattling the bolts and supports, making it groan. Dust rattled down into the darkness, unseen grit from my unseeing eyes. We were sardines in a can waiting to be torn up and eaten. I got the feeling that if the thing stung me now, the poison would be redundant. I would bleed to death before it became an issue. Think, Harry, I shouted at myself. Think, think, think. I was stuck in a frozen elevator, handcuffed to my unconscious friend who was dying of poison while a magical scorpion the size of some French cars tried to tear its way into me and rip me apart. I didn't have my blasting rod or my staff or other gizmos I'd brought with me to the varsity were drained and useless, and my shield bracelet could only prolong the inevitable. A long strip of metal ripped away from the roof, letting in a strip of dim light, and I looked up at the scorpion's underbelly, saw it wedge a claw into the breach, and started to tear it open wider. I should have smashed it when it was just a bug. I should have taken off my shoe and smashed it right there on my desk. My heart leapt in my throat as the thing tilted up, drove an exploratory pincer down to the upper third of the elevator, and then started tearing the hole even larger. I gritted my teeth and started drawing every ounce of power I had. I knew it was useless. I could direct a firestorm up at this thing, but it would slag the metal it was on, and that would come raining down on us and kill us, making the elevator shaft too hot for us to survive. But I wasn't going to just let the thing have me either, and by God, maybe if I did it just right, if I could catch this, let minimize the damage that I did to the surrounding scenery. That was the problem with not being great at evocation. Plenty of speed, plenty of power, not much refinement. That's what the staff did, and the blasting rod. They were designed to help me focus my power, give me a pinpoint of control. Without them, I might as well have been a suicide soldier carrying a dozen grenades strapped to his belt and ready to jerk out the pin. And then it occurred to me, I was thinking in the wrong direction. I swung my eyes down from the ceiling to the elevator's floor, pressed my palms against it. Bits of something rained down on my head and shoulders, and the clicking and scuttling of the scorpion got louder. I took all the power I had drawn in and focused it beneath my palms. There was airspace beneath the elevator, in the elevator's shaft, and that was what I reached for, air instead of fire. It was a simple spell, one I had done hundreds of times, I told myself. It wasn't any big different than calling for my staff to my hand, just a little bigger. Ventos Servitas, I shouted, pouring every bit of strength, every ounce of anger, every shred of fear I had into the spell. And beneath the elevator, the winds rose up to my call, a solid column of air that caught the bottom of the elevator like a giant's palm and hurled it upward through the darkness of the elevator shaft. The brakes squealed, threw off sparks, and fell into pieces that dropped through the hole the scorpion had torn to land next to me. The force of it pressed me down to the floor with a groan. There was a long rising whine as the car accelerated up the elevator shaft. I hadn't meant for there to be quite that much wind, I thought, and prayed that I hadn't just killed me and Murphy both. The elevator hurled up and up, and I could feel my face sagging down with the speed of it. My office building was 12 stories high. We had started on the second floor, so assuming an average of 9 feet per story, it was almost 100 feet to the building's roof. The car shot up in less than half a dozen of my frantic heartbeats, slammed past the blocks at the top of the line, and hammered into the roof of the shaft like the bell on a strongman sledgehammer game at the amusement park. The impact crushed the Scorpion into the concrete. With a series of sharp popping sounds, the chitinous plates cracked and splintered, flattening it into a shapeless brown splotch. Colorless goo, the ectoplasm of magically created mass spattered out between the crushed plates and hied down into the car. At the same time, Murphy and I were hurled up, meeting the goo halfway. I kept Murphy in the shelter of my body, trying to stay between her and the roof, and my back hit it hard enough to make me see stars. We stumbled loosely back down the elevator's floor in a sprawl of limbs, and Murphy groaned beneath me when I landed on her. I stayed still for a moment, stunned. The Scorpion was dead. I'd killed it, crushed it between the elevator and the roof of the shaft, and drenched myself and Murphy and Icker doing it. I'd saved our lives from the murderous device against the odds. But I just couldn't shake the nagging impression that I was forgetting something. There was a little groan from the elevator, and then it shuddered and started sliding back down the shaft, no longer supported by the powerful but short-lived pillar of wind that had driven it up there. We were falling back down the way we had come, and I had the feeling that we weren't going to have a much better time at the bottom than the Scorpion did at the top. Now was the time for the bracelet, and I didn't waste a heartbeat grabbing Murphy close to me and bringing the shield into being around us. I only had a couple seconds to focus and to think. I couldn't make the globe around us too brittle, too strong, or we'd just smash ourselves against the inside of it in the same way we would if we just rode the elevator down. There had to be some give to it, some flexibility to distribute the tremendous force of the abrupt stop at the first floor. It was dark, and there wasn't much time. Murphy and I rose up to the center of the space of the elevator, where I pushed the shield out around us, filled up the space with layer after layer of flexible shielding, semi-cohesive molecules of air, pattern reinforcement to spread the impact around. There was a sense of pressure all around me, as though I had been abruptly stuffed into a styrofoam packing peanuts. We fell faster and faster. I sensed the bottom of the shaft coming, and there was an enormous sound, and I held onto the shield with all my might. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting on the floor of the shattered, devastated elevator, holding a sagging, unconscious Murphy. The elevator's door gave a warped, gasping little ding, and it shuddered open. A pair of EMTs with emergency kits in hand stood staring at the elevator, at Murphy and at me, their jaws hanging open to their knees. Dust billowed everywhere. I was alive. I blinked at that, somewhat stunned. I was alive to look down myself at my arms and legs, and they were all there. And I let my head fall back and howled a defiant laugh, a great gulping whoop of primal joy. "Take that, Victor Shadowman!" I shouted. "Ha! Ha ha ha! Give me your best shot, you murderous bastard! I'm going to take my staff and shove it down your throat!" I was still laughing when the EMTs gathered me up and helped me and Murphy toward the ambulance, too stunned to ask any questions. I saw them both give me wary looks, though, and then trade a glance with one another that they were going to sedate me with something as soon as they got the chance. "The champion!" I howled, still an adrenaline rush the size of the Colorado River as they helped me out toward the ambulance. I thrust my fist into the air, and scarcely noticing or caring that my bracelet of silver shields had turned black and ring and curled into wilted links, burned to uselessness by the energies I had forced through it. "I'm the man, Shadowman. You'd better put your head between your legs and kiss your—" The EMTs helped me outside into the rain. The way it slaps the raindrops on my face shut me up. It made me cold sober faster than anything else in the world could have done. I was suddenly acutely aware of the handcuffs still around my wrist. Still, in fact, that I did not have Victor's talisman to turn his own power against him. Victor was still out there at his lake house. He still had a hank in my hair, and he was still planning on ripping my heart as soon as he possibly could when the storm gave him the strength he needed. I was alive, and Murphy was alive, but my elation was premature. I didn't have anything to be celebrating yet. I lifted my face to the sky. Thunder growled near at hand. Lightning danced overhead, somewhere in the clouds, casting odd light and spectral shadows through the rolling overcast. The storm had arrived. Another tea break. Hope everybody's enjoying the book. We've got another 4 chapters. Hopefully I can read all this. Because I'd hate to have a part 5 just to finish it up. This is chapter 23. Raindrops pelted down around me, the big splashy kind you only really see in the spring. The air grew thicker and hotter even with the rain falling. I had to think fast, use my head, be calm, hurry up. Murphy's handcuffs still had me fastened to her wrist. Both of us were coated in dust that was stuck to the stinking colorless glue, the ectoplasm that magic called from somewhere else, where a generic mask was called for in a spell. The goo wouldn't last long. Within a few more minutes, it would simply dissipate, vanish into thin air, and return to wherever it had come from in the first place. For the moment, it was just a rather disgusting, slimy annoyance. But maybe one I could put to good use. My own hands were too broad, but Murphy had delicate little lady's hands, except where practices with her gun and her martial arts staff routines left calluses. If she'd heard me thinking that and had been conscious, she'd have punched me in the mouth for being a chauvinist pig. One of the EMTs was babbling into a headset, while the other was on Murphy's other side, supporting her along with me. It was my only chance I was going to get. I hunched over beside Murphy's diminutive form, tried to shroud what I was doing with the dark folds of my black duster. I worked at her hand, squeezing her limp, slimy fingers together and trying to slip the steel loop of the handcuffs from over her hand. I took some skin off of her, and she groaned a lot, but I managed to get the cuffs off her wrist just as the EMT and I sat her down on the curb next to the ambulance. The other EMT ran to the back of the ambulance and swung it open, rummaging around inside of it. I could hear sirens, both police cars and fire engines approaching from all directions. Nothing's ever simple when I'm around. She's been poisoned, I told the EMT. The wound site is on her upper right arm or shoulder. Check for a massive dose of brown scorpion venom. There should be some anti-venom available somewhere. She'll need a tourniquet. Buddy, the EMT said, annoyed. I know my job. What the hell happened in there? Don't ask, I said, glancing back at the building. The rain came down more heavily by slow degrees. Was I too late? Would I be dead before I could get to the lake house? You're bleeding, the EMT told me without looking up from Murphy. I looked down at my leg, but it didn't start hurting until I actually saw the injury and remember I had it. The scorpion's claw had ripped me pretty good, opening a 6-inch tear in the leg and my sweats and a comparable gash in the leg beneath, ragged and painful. Sit down, the EMT said. I'll take care of it in a second. He wrinkled up his face. What in the hell is this stinking shit all over you? I wiped the rain from my hair, slicking it back. The other EMT came running with a ball of oxygen and a stretcher, and they both bent over their work with Murphy. Her face had discolored, pale in parts, too brightly red in others. She was as limp as a wet dollar. Except for the occasional shudder or flinch, quivers of her muscles that came from nowhere pained her for a moment and then apparently vanished. It was my fault Murphy was there. It had been my decision to hold information away from her that had compelled her to take different action, to search my office. If I had just been more open, more honest, maybe she wouldn't be lying there right now, dying. I didn't want to walk away from her, and I didn't want to turn my back on her and leave her behind me alone, but I did. Before the support units arrived, before police started asking questions, before EMTs began looking around for me and giving my description to police officers, I turned on my heel and walked away. I hated myself every step. I hated leaving before I knew if Murphy was going to survive the scorpion's venomous sting. I hated that my apartment and my office building had been trashed, torn to pieces by demons and giant insects of my own clumsy power. I hated to close my eyes and see the twisted, mangled bodies of Jennifer Stanton, Tommy Tom, and Linda Randall. I hated the sick, twisting fear in my guts when I imagined my own spare frame torn asunder by the same forces. And most of all, I hated the one responsible for all of it, Victor Sells. Victor, who was going to kill me as soon as the storm grew. I could be dead in another 5 minutes. No, I couldn't. I got a little more excited as I thought about the problem and looked up at the clouds. The storm had come in from the west and was only now going over the city. It wasn't moving fast. It was a ponderous roller of a thunderstorm that would hammer at the area for hours. The Sells Lake House was to the east, around the shore of Lake Michigan, maybe 30 or 40 miles away as the crow flies. I could beat the storm of the lake house if I was fast enough. If I could get a car, I could get out to the lake house and challenge Victor directly. My rod and staff were gone, dropped when the scorpion attacked. I might have been able to call them down from my office with winds, but as worked up as I was, I might accidentally blow out the window if I tried. Blow out the wall if I tried. I didn't care to be crushed by hundreds of pounds of flying brick, called to my outstretched hand by the strength of my magic and my fury. My shield bracelet was gone too, burned out by the tremendous force of the impact of the falling elevator. I still had my mother's pinnacle talisman at my throat, the symbol of order, of the control patterns of power that were the heart of white magic. I still had the advantage of years of formal training. I still had the edge of experience in sorcerer's confrontations. I still had my faith. But that was about all. I was weary, battered, tired, hurt, and I already pulled more magic out of the hat in one day than most wizards could in a week. I was pushing the edge of already, in both mystic and physical terms, but it just didn't matter to me. The pain in my leg didn't make me weaker. It didn't discourage me. It didn't distract me at all. As I walked, it was like fire in my thoughts, my concentration, burning ever more brightly, more pure, refining my anger, my hate in something still hard, still sharp. I could feel it burning and reach for it eagerly, shoving the pain inside to feel my incandescent anger. Victor Shadowman was going to pay for what he had done to all those people, to me and my friends. Damn it all. I was not going to go out before I caught up to that man and show him what a real wizard could do. It didn't take me long to walk to McNally's. I came through the door in a storm of long legs, rain, wind, flapping duster, and angry eyes. The place was packed, people sitting at every one of the 13 stools at the bar, at every one of the 13 tables leaning almost against most of the 13 columns. Pike smoke drifted through the air like a haze. In a haze, stirred by languidly spinning blades of the ceiling fans, the light was dim, candles burning at the tables and its sconces on the wall, plus a little gray storm light sliding in through the windows. The light made the carvings on the columns vague and mysterious, the shadows changing them in a subtle fashion. All of Mac's chessboards were out on the tables, but my sense of it was that those playing and watching the games were trying to keep their minds off something that was disturbing them. They all turned to stare at me as I came in the door and down the steps, dripping rainwater and a little blood on the floor. The room got really quiet. There were the have-nots of the magical community, hedge magi without enough innate talent, motivation, or strength to be true wizards. Innately gifted people who knew that what they were and tried to make as little of it as possible. Dabblers, herbalists, holistic healers, kitchen witches, troubled youngsters just touching their abilities and wondering what they were about. And wondering what to do about it. Older men and women, younger people, and faces impassive or concerned or fearful they all were. I knew them all by sight, if not by name. I swept my gaze around the room. Every one of the people I looked at dropped their eyes, but I didn't need to look deep to see what was happening. Word has a way of getting around between practitioners of magic, and the arcane party line was working as it usually did. Word was out. There was a mark on my head, and they all knew it. Trouble was brewing between two wizards, white and black, and they had all come here to the shelter offered by McNally's winding spaces and disruptive configurations of tables and columns. They'd come here to shelter until it was over. It didn't offer any shelter to me, though. McNally's couldn't protect me against a sharply directed spell. It was an umbrella not a bomb shelter. I couldn't get away from what Victor would do to me unless I cared to flee to the Never Never itself. And for me, that was more dangerous in some ways than staying at Mac's. I stood there in silence for a moment and said nothing. These people were associates, friends of the casual sort, but I couldn't ask them to stand beside me. Whatever Victor thought he had the power of a real wizard, and he could crush any of these people like a boot could a cockroach. They weren't prepared to deal with this sort of thing. Mac, I said finally, my voice fell on silence like a hammer on glass, I need to borrow your car. Mac hadn't quit polishing the bar with a clean white cloth when I entered, his spare frame gaunt in a white shirt and dark breeches. He hadn't stopped when the room had grown still. He didn't stop when he pulled the keys out of his pocket and tossed them to me in one hand. I caught them and said, "Thanks, Mac." "Ugh," Mac said, and he glanced up at me and then behind me. I took the gesture for the warning it was and turned. Lightning flashed outside. Morgan stood silhouetted in the doorway at the top of the little flight of stairs, his broad frame black against the gray sky. He came down the stairs toward me, and the thunder came on his heels. Rain had made little difference in the lay of his dull brown and gray hair, except for the changing of the texture of the curl. In his warrior's ponytail, I could see the hilt of the sword he wore beneath his black overcoat. He had a muscular, scarred hand on it. "Harry Dresden," he said, "I finally figured it out. Using the storms to kill those people is insanely dangerous, but you're just the sort of ambitious fool who would do it." He set his jaw in a hard line. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing at a table. The people sitting at it cleared away fast. "We're going to stay here, both of us, and I'm going to make sure you don't have the chance to use the storm to hurt anyone else. I'm going to make sure you don't get to try your cowardly tricks until the council decides your fate." His gray eyes glittered with grim determination and certainty. I stared at him. I swallowed my anger with the words I wanted to throw back at him, the spell I wanted to use to blast him out of my way, and spoke gently. "Morgan, I know who the killer is, and he's after me next. If I don't get to him and stop him, I'm as good as dead." His eyes hardened in a fanatic's gleam. He spoke in two sharp little explosions of single syllables. "Sit down." He drew the sword out from its scabbard by a couple inches. I let my shoulders sag and I turned toward the table. I leaned against the back of one of the chairs for a moment, taking a little weight off my injured leg, and drew the chair out from the table. Then I picked it up, spun it in a half circle with it to gather momentum, and smashed it into the warden's stomach. Morgan tried to recoil, but I caught him off guard, and the blow struck hard and heavy with the weight of Mac's handmade wooden chair. In real life, the chair doesn't break when you slug somebody with it the way it does in the movies. The person you hit is the one who breaks. Morgan doubled forward, dropping to one hand and one knee. I didn't wait for him to recover. Instead, as the chair bounced off his ribs, I used the momentum of it to spin all the way around in a complete circle in the other direction, lifting the chair high and brought it smiting down over the other man's back. The blow drove him hard to the floor where he lay unmoving. I sat the chair back at the table and looked around the room. Everyone was staring, pale. They knew who Morgan was, what his relation to me was. They knew about the council and my precarious stance with it. They knew I'd just assaulted a duly appointed representative of the council in pursuit of the execution of his duty. I'd rolled the stone over my own grave. There wasn't a prayer that I could convince the council that I wasn't rogue wizard fleeing justice now. Hell with him, I said aloud to no one in particular. I haven't got time for this. Mac came out from behind the bar, not moving in a hurry, but not with his usual laconic lack of concern either. He knelt by Morgan and felt at his throat, then peeled back an eyelid and peered at the man. He squinted up at me and said, expressionless, alive. I nodded, feeling some slight relief. However much of an ass Morgan was, he had good intentions. He and I wanted the same thing, really. He just didn't realize I didn't want to kill him. But I had to admit, in some gleeful little corner of my mind, that look of shocked surprise on his arrogant face as I hit him with the chair was a sight worth remembering. Max stooped and picked up the keys where I dropped them on the floor as I swung the chair. I hadn't noticed I had. Mac handed them back to me and said, Council will be pissed. Let me worry about that. He nodded. Luck, Harry. Mac offered me his hand and I took it. The room was silent. Fearful, worried eyes watched me. I took the keys and walked up out of the light and sheltered McNally's into the storm, my bridges burning behind me. Basically, it's like, look, I ain't got time for your bullshit. So, fuck your couch. You could always write a what-if scenario there, that if you actually sat down and what would have happened and how much egg Morgan would have had on his face when he watched Harry die. The same fucking way. Morgan would have been fucking mortified. But that's not how this happens, so. Be a very short book, and it wouldn't be a series if that was the case. Chapter 24. I drove for my life. Mac's car was an 89 Trans Am, pure white with a big 8-cylinder engine. The speedometer goes to 130 miles an hour. In places, I went past that. The falling rain made the roads dangerous at the speed I was driving, but I had plenty of incentive to keep the car moving as quickly as possible. I was still riding in the steel hard edge of anger that had carried me away from the ruins of my office and through Morgan. The sky grew darker, a combination of building banks of storm clouds and the approaching dusk. The lighting was strange and greenish, the leaves of trees as I left cities standing out too sharply, too harshly, the yellows of the lines of the road too dim. Most of the cars I saw had their headlights on, and street lights were clicking a light as I barreled down the highway. Fortunately, Sunday evening isn't a busy one as far as traffic goes. I'd been dead any other night. I must have also been driving during the watch rotation for the highway patrol, because not one of them tried to pull me over. I tried to tune into the weather station on the radio, but gave up. The storm plus my own agitation was creating a cloud of squealing feedback on the radio speakers, but nothing intelligible about the storm. I could only pray that I was going to get over to Lake Providence before it did. I won. The curtains of rain parted for me as I whipped past the city limits sign for Lake Providence. I hit the brakes to slow down for the turn in the lakefront road that led to the sales house, started hydroplaning, turned it into the slide with more composure and ability than I thought I really should have had, and got the vehicle back under control in time to slide onto the correct road. I pulled into the Sells gravel drive on the swampy little peninsula that stretched out into Lake Michigan. The Trans Am slid to a halt in a shower of gravel and a roar of a mighty engine, then sputtered and gasped in the silence. I felt for a giddy second and a half like Magna P.I. Blue Beetle aside. I could get into the sports car thing. At least it lasted long enough for me to get to the... Excuse me. At least it lasted long enough for me to get to the sales place. Thanks, Mac. I grunted and got out of the car. I am out of practice reading for this duration, and I'm so sorry. Let me actually get some water. Thanks, Mac. I grunted and got out of the car. The gravel driveway leading back to the lake house was half sunken in water from the recent storms. My leg hurt me so much. My leg hurt me too much to run very fast, but I set off down the drive at a long-legged lope, rapidly eating the distance to the house. The storm loomed before me, rolling across the lake toward the shore. I could see columns of rain dimly lit by fading light falling into its waters. I raced the storm to the house, and as I did, I drew in every bit of power and alertness I could, keyed myself to a tighter level, turned my senses into the sharpest pitch. I came to a halt 20 yards away shy of the house and closed my eyes, panting. There could be magical traps or alarms strewn about, or spiritual shrouded guardians invisible to the naked eye. There could be spells waiting, illusions meant to hide the victor's cells from anyone who came looking. I needed to see past all that. I needed to have every scrap of knowledge I could get. So I opened my third eye. How can I explain what a wizard sees? It isn't something that lends itself readily to description. Describing something helps to define it, to give it limits, to set guardrails of understanding around it. Wizards have had the sight since time began, and they still don't understand how it works, why it does what it does. The only thing that I can say is I felt as though a veil of thick cloth had been lifted away from me as I opened my eyes again. And not only from my eyes, but from all my senses. I could abruptly smell the mud and fish odor of the lake, the trees around the house, the fresh scent of the coming rain preceding the storm on the smoke-stained wind. I looked at the trees. I saw them not just in the first green coat of spring, but in the full bloom of summer, the splendor of the fall, and the barren desolation of winter all at the same time. I saw the house, and each separate part of it as its own component, the timbers as parts of spectral trees, the windows as pieces of distant sandy shores. I could feel the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter and the wind coming off the lake. I saw the house wreathed in ghostly flames and knew that those were part of its possible future. That fire laid down several of the paths of possibility that lay ahead in the next hour. The house itself was a place of power, dark emotions, greed, lust, hatred, all hung over it like visible things, molds and slimes that were strewn over it like Spanish moss with malevolent eyes. Ghostly things, restless spirits moved around the place, drawn to the sense of fear, despair, and anger that hung over it, mindless shades that were always to be found in such places like rats in granaries. The other thing that I saw over the house was a grinning, empty skull. Skulls were everywhere, wherever I looked, just at the edge of my vision, silent, still, and bleach white as Solomon's reels, though a fetishist had scattered them around in anticipation of some bizarre holiday. Death lay in the house's future, tangible, solid, unavoidable, maybe mine. I shuddered and shoved the feeling away. No matter how strong the vision, how powerful the image gained with the sight, the future was always mutable. Always something that could be changed. No one had to die tonight. It didn't have to come to that. Not for them and not for me. But a sick feeling settled into me as I looked on this darkling house, with all of its stinking lust and fear, all of its horrid hate worn openly upon it to my sight, like a mantle of flayed human skin on the shoulders of a pretty girl with gorgeous hair, luscious lips, sunken eyes, and rotting teeth. It repulsed me and made me afraid. And something about it intangible, something I couldn't name, called to me, beckoned. Here was power I had thrust aside once before in the past. I had thrown away the only family I had ever known to turn away power exactly like this. This was a sort of strength that could reach out and change the world to my will, bend it and shape it to my desiring, could cut through all the petty trivialities of law and civilization and impose order where there was none, guarantee my security, my position, my future. And what had been my reward for turning that power aside thus far? Suspicious and contempt from the very wizards I had acted to support and protect. Condemnation from the White Council whose law I clung to when all the world had been laid at my feet. I could kill the Shadow Man now, and before he knew I was here. I could call down fury and flame upon the house and kill everyone in it, not leave one stone upon another. I could reach out and embrace the dark energy he had gathered in this place, draw it and use it for whatever I wanted, and the consequences be damned. Why not kill him now? Violet light visible to my sight throbbed and pulsed inside the windows, power being gathered and prepared and shaped. The Shadow Man was inside, and he was gathering his might, preparing to unleash a spell that would kill me. What reason had I to let him go on breathing? I clenched my fists in fury, and I could feel the air crackle with tension as I prepared to destroy the lake house, the Shadow Man, and any pathetic underlings he had with him. With such power I could cast my defiance at the council itself, the gathering of white-bearded old fools without foresight, without imagination, without vision. The council, that pathetic watchdog Morgan, had no idea of the true depths of my strength. The energy was all there, gleeful within my anger, ready to reach out and reduce to ashes all that I hated and feared. The silver pentacle that had been my mother's burned cold on my chest, a sudden weight that made me gasp. I sagged forward to a little and lifted a hand. My fingers were so tightly crushed into fists that it hurt to try to open them. My hand shook, wavered, and began to fall. Then something strange happened. Another hand took mine. The hand was slim and finger-long and delicate, feminine. The hand gently covered mine and lifted it like a small child's until I held my mother's pentacle in my grasp. I held it in my hand, felt its cool strength, its ordered and rational geometry. The five-pointed star within the circle was the ancient sign of white wizardry, the only remembrance of my mother. The cold strength of the pentacle gave me a chance, a moment to think again, to clear my head. I took deep breaths, struggling to see clear the anger, the hate, the deep lust that burned within me for vengeance and retribution. That wasn't what magic was for. That wasn't what magic did. Magic came from life itself, from interaction of nature and the elements, from the energy of all living beings, especially people. A man's magic demonstrates what sort of person he is, what is held most deeply inside him. There is no truer gauge of a man's character than the way in which he employs his strength, his power, I was not a murderer. I was not Victor Sells. I was Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. I was a wizard. Wizards control their power. They don't let it control them. And wizards don't use magic to kill people. They use it to discover, to protect, to mend, to help, not to destroy. The anger abruptly evaporated. The burning hate subsided, leaving my head clear enough to think again. The pain in my legs settled into a dull ache, and I shivered in the wind and the first droplets of rain. I didn't have my staff, and I didn't have my rod. The trinket I did have when we were either expended or burned into uselessness. All I had was what was inside of me. I looked up, suddenly feeling very smaller and very alone. There was no one near me. No hand was touching mine. No one stood close by. For just a moment I thought I smelled a whiff of perfume, familiar and haunting. Then it was gone, and the only one I had to help me was myself. I blew out of breath. Well, Harry, I told myself, that's just going to have to be enough. And so I walked through a spectral landscape littered with skulls into the teeth of the coming storm to a house covered in malevolent power, throbbing with savage and feral strength. I walked forward to face a murderous opponent who had all the advantages and who stood prepared and willing to kill me from where he stood within the heart of his own destructive power, while I was armed with nothing more than my own skill and wit and experience. Do I have a great job or what? I'm going to pause right there because we do have an ad break coming in about a minute and 30, so I don't want to continue with the next chapter. But we have 3 chapters left, and I'm going to try to get through them. Because this is where it starts getting good. The whole how should I put this? The whole encounter, comeuppance, and an epilogue, that whole thing. So we gotta finish. We gotta. This is just when it starts getting good. We got to. I hope everybody's enjoying it. I know I have been. Oh, excuse me. I apologize for that burp. Cool. By the way, guys, I'm going to be getting a new chair on Saturday, so hopefully I'll have that, and we got a few other things that is going to help me along, hopefully, because I really don't want to. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I decided to do something for myself, because this chair I'm in currently is not the greatest in the world, and I didn't want anybody spending money on Throne just to get me a new chair. When I honestly want to hold off on that until we move. So, and it might be a hot minute before that happens, but I wanted something more comfortable than what I got right now. And honestly, I am not very... Anubis, sweetheart. Kitty break. As for anything happening around here weather-wise, it's kind of me right now, honestly. I want to take this brief moment to say I am so sorry for not streaming much over the past few weeks. Like I said, just this year in general has not been good for content creation for me. Because things have been kind of hectic. In fact, I really need to update my avatar again. Because I have gone from white to black now. So, but, oh, I just popped my back. That's lovely. Let's see, what's this? Yep. Simon, you've got that pretty freaking accurate, dude. uh, that's pretty freaking accurate, man. Yes, my community is very vibrant, and I appreciate every one of you. But yes, Wednesdays are going to be for book reading, and next Wednesday, like I said, barring RL situations, I will be doing this every week, and I'm going to be getting through. There's 2 more books in this big omnibus We've got Full Moon and Grave Peril. Um, and then as soon as I get done with that, I got to dig out the next one and read it to you guys. So, um, I'm actually going to put that in there. That way people know where that is. But yeah, I've been, and I'm sorry I've been putting this off so long. I feel like I'll be honest with you guys. I feel like I've been kind of in the doldrums since finishing school. My life has been kind of weird for the past few months. I'm not gonna lie. So I hope, and you do forgive me for not streaming as much or not streaming as promised. Um, I'm going to try to stream on Friday, and I'm going to tell you guys something. Try is the operative word because sometimes real life gets in the way of stuff. It just does. Um, I'm just being honest. I mean, as much as anybody else can be. I'm going to also try my best to set aside a day to do content creation and do like, let me put these clips on, let me sort through my um, channel and see if there's any clippable moments and then put those clips on like YouTube and TikTok and what have you. And I need to do that more often. That's my own fault. I don't blame anybody but me. Because this whole show, while it is a community effort, I'm the one in charge of all the updates and what have you, and I feel like I'm slack-a-lacking on that. So I do hope you forgive me. I have wonderful followers, and I hope you're enjoying this. Alright, back to action. Chapter 25. The sight of Victor's lake house will always be with me. It was an abomination. It looked innocuous enough physically, but on a deeper level it was foul and rotten. It seethed with negative energy, anger, and pride and lust, especially lust. Lust for wealth, lust for power, more than physical desire. Shadowy spirit beings that weren't wholly real, only manifestations of the negative energy of the place, clung to the walls, the rain gutters, the porch, the windowsills, glutting themselves on the negative energy left over from Victor's spell casting. I was guessing that there was a lot of it. He didn't strike me as someone who would be able to make sure that spells were energy efficient. I limped up the front steps. My sight revealed no alarms, no sorcerer's tripwires. I might be giving Victor Shadowman too much credit. He was as powerful as a full-blown wizard, but he didn't have the education. Muscle, not brains, and that was Victor Shadowman. I had to keep that in mind. I tried the front door just for the hell of it. It opened. I blinked, but I didn't question the good fortune or the overconfidence that had seen to it that Victor left his front door standing unlocked. Instead, I took a breath, gathered up what will I hadn't pressed inside. I forget how the house was furnished or decorated. All I remember is what the sight showed me. More of the same as the outside, but more concentrated, more noxious. Things clung everywhere. Things with silent, glittering eyes and hungry expressions. Some reptilian, some more like rats, some insectoid. All of them unpleasant, hostile, and shied away from me as I came in, as the aura of energy I held in readiness around me touched them. They made quiet noises, things that would never be heard with my ears, but the sight encompasses all of that. There was a long, dark hallway coated with the things. I advanced slowly, quietly, and they oozed and crept and slithered from my path. The dark purple light of magic that I had seen from outside was ahead of me and growing brighter. I could hear music playing and recognize the same piece that had been playing on the CD player at the Madison in Tommy Tom's suite when Murphy had asked me there on Thursday. Slow, sensuous music, steady rhythm. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening. I heard sounds of quiet whisper being repeated over and over, a man's voice repeating an incantation, holding a spun readiness for release. That would be Victor. I heard soft sighs of pleasure from a woman. The Becketts? I could only assume so. And in a rumble that I could feel through the soles of my boots, I heard thunder over the lake. The low chanting voice took on an edge of vicious, spiteful satisfaction and continued the incantation. I gathered up what energy I had and stepped around the corner out of the hallway into the spacious room that stretched up to its full height of the house and without interruption. Yards of open air. The room below was a living room. A spiral staircase wound its way up to what looked like a kitchen and dining room on a sort of platform or balcony above the rest of the room. The elevated deck on the back of the house must be accessible from the platform. There was no one in the main room. The chanting and the occasional sigh came from the platform above. The CD player was down in the room beneath. Music flowing from the speakers were covered with an image of fire and dozens of bloated, disgusting creature forms feeding on the music as it came out. I could see the influence of the music as a faint, violent mist in tune with the light coming from the platform above. This was complete ritual spell then involving many base elements coordinated by the central wizard Victor. Tricky, no wonder it was so effective. It must have taken Victor a lot of trial and error to figure it out. I glanced up at the platform, then crossed the room, keeping as far away as I could from the CD player. I slipped under the platform without making any noise, and dozens upon dozens of slimy, not physical spirit things oozed from my path. Rain increased to a dull, steady rhythm outside and on the roof and on the wooden deck against the windows. There were boxes stacked all around me, plastic cases and cartons and cardboard boxes and wooden crates. I opened the nearest one and saw inside at least 100 slender vials like the ones I'd seen before, full of the liquid three-eye. Beneath the vision of my sight it looked different, thick and cloudy with possibility of potential disaster lurking in every vial. Faces, twisted in horror and torment, swam through the liquid, ghostly images of what might be. I looked at the other boxes. In one, ancient liquor bottles full of an almost luminescent green liquid. Absinthe? I leaned closer, sniffing. I could almost taste the madness that swam latent in the liquid. I leaned back from the boxes, stomach churning. I checked the other boxes quickly. Ammonia, reminiscent of hospitals and mental wards. Peyote, mushrooms, and plastic Tupperware. I was familiar with them. Alum, white and powdery. Antifreeze. Glitter in 100 metallic shades in a huge plastic bag. Other things deeper in the shadows that I didn't take time to look at. I'd already figured out what all the articles were for. Potions. Ingredients for potions. This is how Victor was making the third eye. He was doing the same thing I did when I made my little potions, but on a grander scale, using energy stole from other places, other people. He used absinthe as the base and moved on from there. Victor was mass-producing what amounted to a magical poison, one that probably remained inert until it was inside someone, interacting with their emotions and desires. That would explain why I hadn't noticed anything about it before. It wouldn't have been obvious to a cursory examination or to anything short of fully opening my sight, and that was something that wasn't something I did very often. I closed my eyes, shaking. The sight was showing me too much. That was always the problem with it. I could look at these ingredients, the cases of the finished drug, and catch flash images of exactly how much suffering could be caused. There was too much. I was starting to get disoriented. Thunder came more sharply and above me. Victor's voice rose in pitch to something audible. He was chanting in ancient language, Egyptian, Babylonian. It didn't really matter. I could understand. It doesn't really matter. I could understand the sense of the words clearly enough. There were words of hate, malevolence. There were words that were meant to kill. My shaking was becoming more pronounced. Was it only the effects of the sight, the presence of so much negative energy reacting with me? No, I was simply afraid, terrified to come out of my hiding place onto the platform and meet the master of the slithering horde that was draped over everything in sight. I could feel his strength from here, his confidence, his force of will infusing the very air with a sort of hateful certainty. I was afraid with the same fear that a child feels when confronted with a large, angry dog or with the neighborhood bully, the kind of fear that paralyzes, makes you want to make excuses and hide. But there was no time for hiding. No time for excuses. I had to act, so I forced my sight closed and gathered my courage as best I could. Thunder roared outside, and there was a flash of lightning. The two happened close together. The lights flickered, and the music skipped a track. Victor screamed out the incantation in a kind of ecstasy above me. The woman's voice, presumably Miss Beckett's, rose to a fevered pitch. "You pays your money, you takes your chances," I muttered to myself. I focused my will, extended my right arm and open palm to the stereo system, and shouted, "Fuego!" A rush of heat from my hand exploded into flame on the far side of the room and engulfed the stereo, which began to emit more of a long, tortured scream than music. Murphy's handcuffs still dangled from my wrist, one loop swinging free. Then I turned, extended my arms, and roared, "Venice!" Wind swept beneath me, making my duster billow like Batman's cloak, lifting me directly up to the platform and above, over its low railing into the suspended room. Even expecting the sight, it rattled me. Victor was dressed in black slacks, a black shirt, and black shoes, very stylish, especially compared to my sweatpants and cowboy boots. His shaggy eyebrows and lean features were highlighted eerily by the dark light flowing up from the circle around him, where the implements of his ritual were ready to complete the ceremony that would kill me. He had what looked like a spoon, its edges sharpened to razor keenness, a pair of candles, black and white, and a white rabbit, its feet bound with red cord. One of its legs was bleeding from a small tear staining the white fur, and tied against its head with a cord was a lock of my own dark, straight hair. Over one side was another circle, laid out in chalk upon the carpeting, maybe 15 feet across. The Becketts were inside, writhing together in mindless, sweating desire, generating energy for Victor's spell. Victor stared at me in shock as I landed upon the balcony, wind whipping around me, roaring inside the small room like a miniature cyclone, knocking over potted plants and knickknacks. "You!" he shouted. "Me," I confirmed. "There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about, Vic." His shock transformed into snarling anger in a heartbeat. He snatched up the sharpened spoon, raised it in his right hand, and screamed out words of the incantation. He dragged the rabbit in front of him, the ceremonial representation of me, and prepared to gouge out its and therefore my heart. I didn't give him the chance to finish. I reached into a pocket and hurled the empty plastic film canister at Victor Shadaman. As a weapon, it wasn't much, but it was real, and it had been hurled by a real person, a mortal. It could shatter the integrity of a magic circle. The canister went through the air above Victor's circle and broke it just as he completed the incantation and drove the spoon's blade down to the poor rabbit. The energy of the storm came whipping down the cylinder of focus created by Victor's now flawed circle. Power shattered out into the room, wild, undirected, and unfocused, naked color and raw sound spewing everywhere with hurricane force. It sent objects flying, including Victor and me, and shattered the secondary circle where the Beckets were in, sending them rolling and bumping across the floor into one wall. I braced myself against the guardrail and held on as the power raged around me, charging the air with raw, dangerous magic, surging like water under pressure, seeking an outlet. "You bastard!" Victor screamed at me in the gale. "Why don't you just die?" He lifted a hand and screamed something at me, and fire washed across the space between us, instant and hot. I tapped some of the ample power now available in the room and formed a hard, high wall in front of me, squeezing my eyes shut in concentration. It was a dozen times harder to shield without my bracelet, but I blocked the flame and sent it swirling high and over me, huddling under a little quarter dome of hardened air that would not let Victor's magic past it. I opened my eyes in time to see the flames touch the ceiling beams and set them alight. The air still thrummed with energy as the wash of flame passed. Victor snarled when he saw me rise, lifted a hand to one side and snarled out words of summoning. A crooked stick that looked like it might be some kind of bone soared through the fire toward him, and he caught it in one hand, turning to me with the attitude of a man holding a gun. The problem with most wizards is that they get too used to thinking in terms of one venue: magic. I don't think Victor expected me to rise, lurch across the trembling floor toward him, and drive my shoulder into his chest, slamming him back into the wall with a satisfying thud. I leaned back a little and drove a knee toward his gut, missed, and got him square between the legs instead. The breath went out of him in a rush, and he doubled over onto the ground. By this time, I was screaming at him, senseless and incoherent. I started kicking at his head. I heard a metallic ratcheting sound behind me and spun my head in time to see the Beckett, naked, pointing an automatic weapon at me. I threw myself to one side and heard a brief explosion of gunfire. Something hot tore my hip, spinning me into a roll, and I kept going into the kitchen. I heard Beckett snarl a curse, and there were a number of sharp clicking sounds, and the automatic had jammed. Hell, with this much magic flying around the room, we were all lucky the thing hadn't just exploded. Victor, meanwhile, shook at the end of the bone tube he held, and a half a dozen dried brown scorpion husks fell out into the carpeting. His whiter-than-white teeth flashed in his boulder brown face, and he snarled, "Scorpius, Scorpius, Scorpius!" His eyes gleamed with lust and fury. One of my legs wasn't answering my calls to action, so I crab-walked into the kitchen on the heels of my hands and one leg. Out on the dining section of the balcony, the scorpion started to life and started to grow. First one, then the others. Oriented on the kitchen, started tormenting, scuttling bursts of speed, getting larger as they came. Victor howled his glee. The Beckets rose, both naked and savage-looking, both sporting guns, and their eyes empty of anything but some sort of wild bloodlust. I felt my shoulders press against a counter. There was a rattling, and the broom fell down next to me, its handle bouncing off of my head and landing on the tile floor beside me. I grabbed it, my heart pounding somewhere around my throat. A room full of deadly drug, one evil sorcerer on his home turf, two crazies with guns, one storm of wild magic looking for something to set it into explosive motion, and half a dozen scorpions like the one I'd barely survived earlier, rapidly growing to movie monster size. Less than a minute on the clock, and no timeouts remaining for the quarterback. All in all, it looked like a bad evening for the home team. Chapter 26. I was so dead. There was no way out of the kitchen, no time to use an explosive evocation in close quarters, and the deadly scorpions would rip me to pieces well before Victor could blow me up with explosive magic, or one of the blood-maddened Beckets could get their guns working long enough to put a few bullets in me. My hip was beginning to scream with pain, which I suppose was better than the deadly dull numbness of more serious injuries and shock. But at the moment it was the least of my worries. I clutched the broom to me, and my only pitiful weapon. I didn't even have the mobility to use it. And then something occurred to me, something so childish that I almost laughed. I plucked the straw from the broomstick and began a low and steady chant, a bobbing about in the air with the fingers that held the straw. I reached out and took hold of the immense amount of untapped energy running rampant in the air and drew them into a spell. Politus, I shouted, bringing the chant to a crescendo. Politus, Politus. The broom twitched, it quivered, it jerked upright in my hands, and it took off across the kitchen floor, its brush waving menacingly to meet the scorpion's advance. The last thing I expected to use that cleaning spell for when I had laboriously been forced to learn it was a tide of poisonous scorpion monsters, but any port in a storm, the broom swept into them with a ferocious energy, started flicking them across the kitchen toward the rest of the balcony with tidy, efficient motions. Each time one of the scorpions would try to dodge around it, the broom would tilt out and catch the beastie before it could, flick it neatly onto its back, and continue about its job. I'm pretty sure it got all the dirt out on the way, too, when I do a spell, I do it right. Victor screeched in anger when he saw his pet, still too small to carry much mass, being neatly corralled and ushered off the balcony. The Becketts lifted their guns and opened fire on the broom, while I hunkered down behind the counter. They must have been using revolvers now, because they fired smoothly in an ordered rhythm. Bullets smacked into the walls and the counters at the back of the kitchen, but none of them came through the counter that sheltered me. I caught my breath, pressing my hand against the blood on my hip. It hurt like bloody hell. I thought the bullet was stuck somewhere by the bone. I couldn't move my leg. There was a lot of blood, but not so much as I was sitting in a puddle. Out on the balcony, the fires began to catch, spreading over the roof. The entire place was going to come crashing down before much longer. "Stop shooting! Stop shooting, damn you!" Victor screamed as the gunfire came to a halt. I risked a peek over the counter. My broom had swept the scorpions off the ledge of the balcony into the floor and room below as I watched Victor caught the broom by the handle and broke it over the balcony railing with a snarl. The straw I still held in my fingers broke with a sharp little twang, and I felt the energy fade from the spell. Victor Shadowman snarled. "A cute trick, Dresden," he said, "but pathetic. There's no way you can survive this. Give up. I'll be willing to let you walk away." The Becketts were reloading. I ducked my head back down before they got any funny ideas and hoped they didn't have heavier rounds that could penetrate the counters I hid behind and whatever contents they contained to kill me. "Sure, Vic," I replied, keeping my voice as calm as I could. You're known for your mercy and sense of fair play, right?" All I have to do is keep you in there until the fire spreads enough to kill you," Victor said. "Sure, let's all die together, Vic. Too bad about all your inventory down there, though, huh?" Victor snarled and pitched another burst of flame into the kitchen. This time it was much easier to cover myself, half shielded already as I was by the counters. "Oh, cute," I said, voice dripping with scorn. "Fire's the simplest thing you can do. All the real wizards learn that the first couple of weeks and move on up from there." I looked around the kitchen. There had to be something I could use, some way I could escape, but nothing presented itself. "Shut up!" Victor snarled. "Who's the real wizard here, huh? Who's the one with all the cards, and who's the one bleeding on the kitchen floor? You're nothing, Dresden, nothing. You're a loser. And you know why?" "Gee," I said, "let me think." "River, shut up." I don't know what she's barking at. He laughed. He laughed harshly. "Because you're an idiot. You're an idealist. Open your eyes, man. You're in the jungle now. It's survival of the fittest, and you've proved yourself unfit. The strong do as they wish, and the weak get trampled. When this is over, I'm going to wipe you off on my shoe and keep going like you never existed." "Too late for that," I told him. I was in the mood to tell a white lie. "The police know all about you, Vic. I told them myself, and I told the White Council, too. You've never heard of them, have you, Vic? They're like the Super Friends and the Inquisition all rolled up into one. You'll love them. They'll take you out like yesterday's garbage. God, you really are ignorant. You really are an ignorant bastard." There was a moment's silence. Then, "No," he said, You're lying to me, Dresden." "If I'm lying, I'm dying," I told him. Hell, as far as I knew, I was. "Oh, and Johnny Marcone, too. I made sure that he knew who and where you were." "Son of a bitch," Victor said. "You stupid son of a bitch. We put you up to this." "Who put you up to this? Marcone? Is that why he pulled you off the street?" I had to laugh weakly. A bit of flaming crabnet fell off the upper shelf into the tiles next to me. It was getting hot in here. The fire was spreading. "You'd never figured it out, did you, Vic?" "Who?" Victor screamed at me. "Who was it, damn you? That whore Linda? Her whore friend Jennifer?" Strike two, strike three, and the other side gets a chance to steal, I said back. Hell, at least if I could keep him talking, I might keep him in the house long enough to go down with me. And if I could make him mad enough, he might make a mistake. Stop talking to him, Beckett said. He's not armed. Let's kill him and get out of here before we all die. Go ahead, I said in a cheerful tone. Hell, I've got nothing to lose. I'll send this whole house up in a fireball. They'll make Hiroshima look like a hibachi. Make my day. Shut up, Victor shouted. Who was it, Dresden? Who, damn you? If I gave him Monica, he might still be able to get to her if he got away. There was no sense risking that. So all I said was, go to hell, Vic. Get the car started, Victor snarled. Get out through the deck doors. The scorpions will kill anything on the first floor. I heard motion in the room, someone moving out the doors onto the elevated deck at the back of the house. The fire continued to spread. Smoke rode the air in a thick haze. I've got to go, Dresden, Victor told me. His voice was gentle, almost a purr, but there's someone I want you to meet first. I got a sick, twisted little feeling in the pit of my stomach. Kalazak, Victor whispered. Power thrummed, the air shimmered and shone, began to twist and spiral. Kalazak, Victor whispered again, louder, more demanding. I heard something, a warbling hiss that seemed to come from a great distance, rushing closer. The black wizard called the name for the third and final time. I heard his voice rising to a shriek. Kalazak! There was a thunder crack in the house, a dull and sulphurous stench, and I craned my neck over the counter, risking a glance. Victor stood by the sliding glass doors that led out into the wooden deck. Red and orange flames wreathed the ceiling on that side of the house, and smoke was filling the room below, casting the whole place into hellish glow. Crouched on the floor in front of Vic was the toad demon I had banished the night before. I had known that I hadn't killed it. You can't kill demons as such, only destroy their physical vessels they create for themselves when they come into the mortal world. If called again, they can create a new vessel without difficulty. I watched in fascination, stunned. I'd only seen one person call a demon before, and I'd killed my old master shortly after. The thing crouched in front of Victor, its lightning blue eyes whirling with the shades of scarlet hate, staring up at the black-clad wizard, trembling with the need to tear into him, to rend and destroy their mortal being who had dared summon it forth. Victor's eyes grew wider and more mad, glittering with fevered intensity. Sweat ran down his face, and he tilted his head slowly to one side, as though his vision were skewing along the horizontal, and by the motion he would compensate for it. I gave silent thanks that I closed my third eye when I did. I had not wanted to see what that thing really looked like, and I didn't want to get a good look at the real Victor Sells either. The demon finally gave a hiss of frustration and turned toward me with a croaking growl. Victor dropped his head back and laughed, his will triumphant over that of the being he had called from beyond. There, Dresden, do you see? The strong survive and the weak are torn to little pieces. He flapped his hand at me and said to the demon, kill him. I struggled to my feet, supporting my weight on the counter to face the demon as it rose and began a slow stalk toward me. My God, Victor, I said, I can't get over how clumsy you are. Victor's smile immediately became a snarling sneer, and once again I saw fear touch the corner of his eyes, uncertainty even though he was on top, and I felt a smile quirk my lips. I moved my gaze to the demons. You really shouldn't hand someone else a demon's name, I told him. Then I drew in a breath and shouted out in a voice of command, Kalashazak! The demon stopped in its tracks and gave a whistling howl of agony and rage as I called its name and drew my will up to hurl against it. Kalashazak! I snarled again. The demon's presence was suddenly there in my head, raging slippery and slimy and wriggling like a venomous tadpole. It was pressure, horrible pressure, on my temples that made me see stars and threatened to steal enough of my balance to send me falling to the floor. I tried to speak again, and the words stuck in my throat. The demon hissed in anticipation, and the pressure on my head redoubled, trying to force me down to make me give up the struggle, at which point the demon would be free to act. The lightning blue, its eyes became glaringly bright, painful to look upon. I thought of the little Jenny Sells, oddly enough, and of Murphy lying pale and unconscious on a stretcher in the rain, of Susan crouched next to me, sick and unable to run. I had beaten this frog once. I could do it again. I cried out the demon's name for the third and final time, my throat burning and raw. The word came out garbled and imperfect, and just for a sinking moment I feared the worst, but Kalashazak howled again, hurled itself furiously to the floor, thrashing its limbs out like a poisoned bug, raging and tearing great swaths out of the carpet. I sagged, and the weirdness that came over me threatened to make me black out. What are you doing? Victor said, his voice rising to a high-pitched shriek. What are you doing? He was staring at the demon in horror. Kill him! I'm your master! Kill him! Kill him! The demon howled in rage, turning its burning glare to me and then Victor, as though trying to decide who to devour first. Its eyes settled on Victor, who went pale and ran for the doors. "Oh, no, you don't," I muttered. And I uttered the last spell I could manage. One final time, on the last gasp of my power, the winds rose and lifted me from the earth. I hurtled into Victor like an ungainly cannonball, driving him away from the doors, past the demon, as it made an awkward lunge at us, and toward the railing of the balcony. We fell in a confused heap at the edge of the balcony that overlooked the room beneath, full of dark smoke and the red glow of flame. The air had grown almost too hot to breathe. Pain jolted through my hip, more bright and blinding than anything I'd ever imagined. I sucked in a breath. The smoky air burned, made me choke and gasp. I looked up. Fire was spreading everywhere. The demon was crouched between us and the only way out. Over the edge of the balcony was only chaos and flame and smoke, strange dark smoke that should have been rising, but instead almost settled along the floor like London fog. The pain was too great. I simply couldn't move. I couldn't even take enough breath to scream. "Damn you!" Victor screamed. He regained his feet and hauled me up toward his face with berserk strength. "Damn you!" he repeated. "What happened? What did you do?" "The fourth law of magic forbids the binding of any being against its will," I grated out. Pain was tight around my throat, making me fight to speak words, so I stepped in and cut your control over it, and didn't establish any of my own. Victor's eyes widened. "You mean it's free?" I confirmed. I glanced at the demon. "Looks hungry." "What do we do?" Victor said, his voice shaking, and started shaking me too. "What do we do?" "We die," I said. Hell, I was going to do that anyway, but at least this way I get to take you out with me. I saw him glance at the demon, then back at me. I was terrified and calculated. "Work with me," he said. "You stopped it before. You can stop it again. We can beat it together and leave." I studied him for a moment. I couldn't kill him with magic. I didn't want to. And it would only brought a death sentence on my head in any case, but I could stand by and do nothing, and that's exactly what I did. I smiled at him, closed my eyes, and did nothing. "Fuck you then, Dresden," Victor snarled. "It can only eat one of us at a time, and I'm not going to be the one to get eaten today." He picked me up to hurl me toward the demon. I objected with fragile tenacity. We grappled. The fire raged. Smoke billowed. The demon came closer, lightning eyes gleaming through the hellish gloom. Victor was shorter than me, stockier, better at wrestling, and he hadn't been shot in the hip. He levered me up and almost threw me, but I moved quicker, whipping my right arm at his head and catching him with the flailing free end of Murphy's handcuffs, breaking his motion. He tried to break away, but I held on to him, dragged him in a circle to slam against the guardrail of the balcony. We both toppled over. Desperation gives a man extraordinary resources. I flailed at the balcony railing and caught it at the base, keeping myself from going over into the rolling smoke, and I shot a glance below and saw the glistening brown hide of one of the scorpions, its stinging tail held up like the mast of a ship, cutting through the smoke at least 4 feet deep. The room was filled with angry, clicking, scuttling sounds. Even in a single desperate glance, I saw a couch torn to pieces by a pair of scorpions in less time than it took to take a breath. They loomed over, their tails waving in the air like flags from the back of golf carts. Hell's bells. Victor had grabbed onto the railing a little above me and to the left, he stared at the oncoming demon with a face twisted with hatred. I saw him drawing a breath and try to plant a foot firmly enough to free one hand to point at the oncoming demon in some sort of magical attack or defense. I couldn't allow Victor to get out of this. He was still whole. If he could knock the demon down, he might still slip out, so I had to tell him something that would make him mad enough to try to take my head off. "Hey, Vic," I shouted, "it was your wife. It was Monica that ratted on you." The words hit him like a physical blow, and his head whipped around toward me, his face contorting in fury. He started to say something to me, the words of a spell meant to blow me to bits, maybe, but the toad demon interrupted him by rearing up with an angry hiss and snapping his jaws down over Victor's collarbone and throat. Bone broke with audible snaps, and Victor squealed in pain, his arms and legs shuddering. He tried to push his way down, away from the demon. The creature's balance wobbled. I gritted my teeth and tried to hold on. A scorpion leapt at me, brown and gleaming. I drew my leg up just out of reach of its pincers, just barely. "Bastard!" Victor cried, struggling uselessly in the demon's jaws. There was blood running down his body, fast and hot. The demon had hit an artery and was simply holding on, wavering at the edge of the balcony as Victor struggled and started kicking at my near hand. He hit me once, twice, and my balance wavered, my grip slipping. A quick glance below me showed another scorpion getting ready to jump at me, this one closer. "Murphy," I thought, "I should have listened to you. If the scorpions didn't kill me, the demon wouldn't. If the demon didn't, the fire was going to kill me. I was going to die." There was a certain peace in thinking that, and knowing that it was all about to be over, I was going to die. It was as simple as that. I had fought as hard as I could, done everything I could think of, and it was over. I found myself in my final seconds idly wishing that I could have had time to apologize to Murphy, that I could apologize to Jenny Sells for killing her daddy, that I could apologize to Linda Randall for not figuring things out fast enough and saving her life. Murphy's handcuffs lay tight and cold against my forearm as monsters and demons and black wizards and smoke closed in all around me. I closed my eyes. Murphy's handcuffs. My eyes snapped open. Murphy's handcuffs. Victor swung his foot at my left hand again. I kicked with my legs and landed with my shoulders and hauled with my shoulders to give me a second of lift, and grabbed Victor Sells' pants leg in my left hand with my right. I flicked the free end of the handcuffs around one of the bars of the guardrail. The ring of the metal cycled around on its hinge and locked into place. Then, as I started to fall back down, I hauled on Victor's leg. He screamed a horrible, high-pitched squeal as he started to fall. Kalshazak, finally overbalanced by the additional weight and leverage I had added to Victor's struggles, pitched over the balcony guardrail into the smoke below, crashing down to the floor, carrying Victor with him. There was a rush and sculling of clicking sounds, a piercing whistle hissed from the demon. Victor's screams rose to something high-pitched and horrible until he sounded more like an animal, a pig squealing at slaughter, than a man. I swung from the balcony, my feet several feet above the fray, held suspended in acutely painful fashion by Murphy's handcuffs, one loop around my wrist, the other locked around the balcony railing. I looked down as my vision started to fade. I saw a sea of brown gleaming pieces of segmented chitinous armor. I saw the scorpion's stinging tails flashing down over and over again. I saw the lightning eyes of Kalshazak's physical vessel, and I saw one of them pierced and put out by the flashing sting of one of the scorpions, and I saw Victor Sells struck over and over again by stingers the size of ice picks, the wounds foaming with poison. The demon ignored the pincers and the stingers of the scorpions to begin tearing him apart, his face contorted in the final agony of rage and fear. The strong survive and the weak get eaten. I guess Victor invested in the wrong kind of strength. I didn't want to watch what was happening below me. The fires consuming the ceiling above were rather beautiful, actually, rolling waves of flame, cherry red, sunset orange. I was too weak to try to get out of this mess, and the entire thing had become far too annoying and painful to even consider anymore. I just watched the flames and waited and noticed oddly that I was simply starving. And no wonder I hadn't eaten a decent meal since Friday. You notice odd things in those final moments, they say. And then you start seeing things. For instance, I saw Morgan come through the sliding glass doors leading from the outside deck, the silver sword of the White Councilor's justice in his hands. I saw one of the scorpions, now the size of a German shepherd, figure out the stairs, scuttle up and hurl at Morgan. I saw Morgan's silver sword slash snicker snack and leave the scorpion in writhing pieces on the floor. Then I saw Morgan, his expression grim, his weight making the fire-chewed balcony shudder, come for me. His eyes narrowed when he saw me, and he lifted his sword, leaning far over the balcony railing. The blade flashed bright silver in the firelight as it started to come down. Typical, was my last thought. How perfectly typical to survive everything the bad guys could do to get taken out by the people whose cause I had been fighting. Let me take a quick tea break. This is the last chapter. Actually, this stream may end in here because I can't get my voice to get any better. I'd hate for the stream to only be about 2.5 hours long, but when one's a little hoarse, it's hard to be functional. Anyway. Alright. Chapter 27. I woke somewhere cool and dark in tremendous pain, coughing my lungs out. Rain was falling on my face, and it was the greatest feeling I'd ever known. Morgan's face was over mine, and I realized he'd been giving me CPR. Ew. I coughed and spluttered and sat up, wheezing for breath. Morgan watched me, for a moment, and then scowled and stood up, eyes flickering around. I managed to get enough wind to speak and said numbly, "You saved me." He grimaced. "Yes. But why?" He looked at me again, then stooped to pick up his sword and slipped into the scabbard at his side. "Because I saw what happened in there. I saw you risk your life to stop the Shadow Man without breaking any of the laws. You weren't the killer." I coughed some more and said, "That doesn't mean you had to save me." He turned and blinked at me as though puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You could have left me to die." His hard expression never changed, and he said, "You weren't guilty. You're a part of the White Council." His mouth twisted as though the words were fresh lemons. "Technically, I had an obligation to preserve your life. It was my duty." "I wasn't the killer," I said. "No." "So," I wheezed, "that would make me right, and then that would make you Morgan scowled, more than ready to cower at the doom if you cross the line, Dresden. Don't think this has gotten you off the hook as far as I'm concerned. So, if I remember correctly, as a warden, it's your duty to report on my conduct to the council, isn't it? His scowl darkened. So you're going to have to go to them on Monday and tell them all about what really happened. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Yes, he snarled. It is even possible they will even lift the doom. I started laughing weakly. You haven't won, Dresden. There are many on the council who know full well that you have consorted with the powers of darkness. Well, we, at least, are not relaxing our vigil on you. We will watch you day and night. You will prove that you're a danger that must be stopped. I kept laughing. I fell over my side. I laughed so much. Morgan arched an eyebrow and simply stared at me. Are you all right? Give me about a gallon of Listerine, I choked, and I'll be just fine. Morgan just stared at me, and I laughed harder. He rolled his eyes and growled something about the police being here in a moment to provide medical care. He then turned and stomped off into the woods, muttering to himself the whole way. The police arrived in time to catch the Becketts trying to leave and arrest them for all things being naked. Later, they were implicated in the third-hour drug raid and prosecuted on distribution charges. Just as well for them that they're in the Michigan justice system. They wouldn't have come out of a cell alive if they had been in Chicago. It wouldn't have been good for Johnny Marcone's business. The Varsities suffered a mysterious fire the night of my visit. I hear Marcone didn't have any trouble collecting the insurance money in spite of all the odd rumors going around. Word hit the street that Marcone had hired Harry Dresden to take out the head of the Third Eye Gang. One of those rumors you can't trace back to any one person. I didn't try to deny it. It was a cheap enough price not to have to worry about anyone bombing my car. I was too hospitalized to show up at the meeting with the White Council, but as it turned out, they decided to lift the doom of Damocles, which I'd always thought rather pretentious name in any case, from me, due to valorous action above and beyond the call of duty. I don't think Morgan ever forgave me for being a good guy. He had to eat crow in front of the whole council, relentlessly driven by his anal retentive sense of duty and honor. There's no love lost between us, but the guy was honest. I'll give him credit for that. And hell, at least I don't have to look forward to him popping out from nowhere every time I cast a spell, I hope. Murphy was in critical condition for nearly 72 hours, but she pulled through. They gave her a room right down the hall for me. In fact, I sent flowers to her hospital room along with the surviving ring of her handcuffs. I told her in a note not to ask how the chains between the rings had been so neatly severed. I didn't think she'd buy that someone cut it with a magic sword. The flowers must have helped. The first time she got out of bed was to totter down the hall in my room, throw them in her face, and leave without saying a word. She professed to have no memory of what happened at my office, and maybe she didn't. But in any case, she got the warrant for my arrest rescinded, and a couple weeks later, when she went back to work, she called me for advice the next day, and she sent a big check to cover my expenses in the murder investigations. I guess that means we're friends again, in a professional sense. But we don't joke anymore. Some wounds don't heal very quickly. The police found the remains of the huge three-eye stash in what was left of the lake house, and Victor Sells eventually came up as the bad guy. Monica Sells and her children vanished into witness protection. I hope they've got a better life now than they had before. I suppose it couldn't be much worse. Bob eventually came home again, more or less within the 24-hour time limit. I suppose I turned a deaf ear to rumors of a particularly wild party at the University of Chicago, which lasted from Saturday night to Sunday night, and Bob wisely never mentioned it. Date with a Demon was a headliner for the Arcane when it came out the following Monday, and Susan came by my hospital room to bring me a copy and talk to me about it. She seemed greatly amused by the cast that held my lips immobilized, my hips immobilized until the docs could be sure there wasn't too much fracturing. The X-ray machine kept fouling whenever they tried to use it on me for some reason. And commented that it was a pity I wasn't more mobile. I used the sympathy factor to badger another date out of her, and she didn't seem to mind too much. That time we were not interrupted by a demon, and I didn't need any of Bob's love potions or advice. Thank you very much. Mac got his Trans Am back. I got the Blue Beetle back. That didn't seem exactly equitable, but at least the Beetle still runs most of the time. I made sure to send Pete out to Toot Toot and his fairy buddies every night for a week, and once a week ever since. I'm pretty sure that the kid from Pizza Express thought I was a loony, having him drop off a pizza by the roadside. Heck with him, I make good on my promises. Mister got a little shortchanged on the whole deal, but it's well beneath his dignity to notice such things. And me? What did I get out of it? I'm not really sure. I escaped from something that had been following me for a long time, and I'm not sure. I'm not just not sure what. I'm not sure who was more certain that I was a walking antichrist waiting to happen, the conservative branch of the White Council, the men like Morgan, or me. For them, at least, the question has been partly laid to rest. For myself, though, I'm not so sure. The power is there, the temptation is there. That's just the way it's going to be. I can live with that. The world is getting weirder, darker every single day. Things are spinning around faster and faster and threatening to go completely awry. Falcons and falconers the center cannot hold. But in my corner of the country, I'm just trying to nail things down. I don't want to live in Victor's jungle, even if it did eventually devour him. I don't want to live in a world where the strong rule and the weak cower. I'd rather make a place where things are a little quieter, where trolls stay the hell under the bridges, and elves don't come swooping out to snatch children from their cradles. Where vampires respect the limits, and where the fairies mind their P's and Q's. My name is Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. Conjure by it at your own risk. When things get strange, when what goes bump in the night flicks on the lights and no one else can help you, give me a call. I'm in the book. The end. For now. So that is the end of Stormfront. And I will be back next Wednesday with more.